Cool.
All right, we are live. So happy Saturday, everybody, even though that's going to time lock this video for some folks. But frankly, I don't give a damn. For the folks out in LA, be safe. Stay with somebody you're with. Don't go out by yourself and keep an eye on your six. I know shit's getting rough out there. But all the depressing shit out of the way. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Nightmares and Nerdscapes, episode 4. Tonight we're going to be covering a seminal film in a lot of people's lives. I think this was released shortly before I was born, and around the time that my co-host, my special guest this week, the Nerd King himself, Danny from Cutting Edge Hero, was born. I believe you're an '82 kid as well, right?
I am. Yeah, I was born in '82. When did the movie come out?
'82. That's all I know. I figured 12 months. That's close enough. But all right. So appreciate everybody jumping on. Danny, appreciate you being here. It's been great jumping in with the Cutting Edge Hero folks and seeing what you guys have done over there, and looking forward to where things go every other Wednesday night. So
yeah, you are an absolute menace in our chat, and it is incredible. It's the kind of energy we needed.
Poor Randy.
Poor Randy. No, Randy deserves it. You got to razz the new guy. He's just taken on that seat. Landon held it for a really long time, and Randy's got to earn a spot. So don't go easy on Randy. He can handle it. He's got thick skin. He's a good guy. So
good. All right. Well, everybody out there, go ahead and settle in. Grab a drink. Let's do it. Cheers.
We are the DFPN. Always question the answers.
All right, fancy video over. So I was telling Danny
that was an introduction.
Yeah. Telling Danny before we came on board, I had to download, edit, re-download, and re-upload that about 20 minutes before we were supposed to go live, and I was panicking. But thankfully, we got it done. So, Creepshow. Anybody who's been following me for any amount of time, I think, knows my thoughts on this film. For the longest time, Creepshow 2 was actually my favorite, because that was the first one I was introduced to. But having gone back, I think my opinion has actually changed. So between 1 and 2, Danny, what are your thoughts? Which one do you prefer?
I think I'm more closer to your original opinion. I think I think Creepshow 2 has had a bigger impact on me. The stories have stuck with me better. Of course, the original has some stories that are kind of legendary, especially like what the tide will bring.
Oh yeah, Leslie Nielsen and Ted Danson.
Yes, that one's kind of famous for what it does. So I think that's great. But like the story of like the raft from Creepshow 2, like that has stuck with me my entire adult life. I think about it every time I'm on any body of water, how terrifying that is. And it's stuck with me. But you can't have Creepshow 2 without Creepshow 1. So you have to give props to the one that led the way. Actually, I'm sure you're wanting to talk about this, but there's a lot of horror genres out there, or horror properties out there, that owe a lot to Creepshow. It did a lot of the heavy lifting. Yeah, it did a lot of the heavy lifting. So, but for me, I think still 2 is my favorite, just because it's left such an indelible impression on me. But 1's legendary.
Yeah, the raft is one of those. That's actually the first Creepshow anything that I ever saw. My dad was watching it late one night. I snuck out and hid behind the couch and saw boobs and went, "Oh shit, what's this?" And then hung out to finish it, and then went back later on and watched the entire thing. But yeah, that one for sure sticks with me. And the no swimming sign at the very end is just, I
Yeah.
laugh every time I see it. But yeah, like you were talking a minute ago about the different horror properties that owe so much back to Creepshow. And one of the things that I kind of want to go over to kick this thing off is everything that led up to it, which I don't know, for anybody who hasn't read Stephen King's On Writing, for example, um, I don't know that they fully know, one, that EC Comics was a thing, or two, just how big it was in the 40s and 50s. Did you have a chance to go out and dig into anything with regards to EC Comics itself?
Not EC Comics itself. The only thing I've always been this probably shows through my love of superhero shit all behind me. But my love for comics has almost always been superhero related. So no,
Yeah, Marvel, DC.
I haven't dug too much into that. That being said, I do have the Creepshow comic right here,
Which is dope.
that someone gifted to me. But it's the full. I believe this came out after the movie though,
Yep.
because a lot of the art in here, the character faces are the faces from the movie.
Yep.
For sure. So I can't imagine it went the other direction.
No. So basically, EC Comics actually started in the early 1940s. A guy named, I want to say his name was Max Gaines, started it. And it started out
like a gym
being
bro.
educational comics. That was the actual name of it, educational comics, which cracked me up.
Yeah.
And then around like 47, he died. His son took over, and it became entertainment comics. And that's when they started pushing out, Tales from the Crypt, which led to the 1972 movie that a lot of people don't know exists. Most people think, Tales from the Crypt, it's the late 80s, early 90s Demi Moore launching television series.
That's what I thought too. I had no idea. You're
Started
teaching me
way
right
back.
now.
Way back. Then you had the Vault of Horror, you had the Haunt of Fear, all of these horror anthology comic series. And if you watch Creepshow, more Creepshow 1 than Creepshow 2, the art style in that movie, it really mirrors the art style from the comics themselves, right? And you had artists like, Al Feldstein, Jack Davis, Wally Wood, Graham Ingalls, all of these guys worked for EC Comics up until the evangelist struck in the mid 1950s with the Comics Code Authority, which basically shut a bunch of shit down. I think even Stan Lee has got a couple interviews out there talking about that and just berating the hell out of what they did with that.
Yep. Yeah, because everybody was scared Batman and Robin was turning kids gay.
Well, not just that. I mean, it's a weird thing, right? So we go through every decade. It feels like we've got one thing that the evangelical right want to beat the snot out of, right? Because it's causing violence or turning kids gay or it's satanic, right? In the 60s, it was drugs. In the 70s, it was dance. In the 80s, it was cartoons. I mean, I remember my mom telling me that Skeletor was an analog for the devil. In the 90s, it was video games, right? Especially after Columbine. And then in the aughts, it became music. Eminem caused everything wrong in the world in the early 2000s.
Marilyn Manson.
And
Marilyn Manson.
Forgot about Manson. Him and his removed lower ribs.
Right,
That's
totally
it's a
true
very
story.
deep. Yeah, it's a very deep joke for anybody that's not of our generation. But
yeah. I've certainly was told those rumors and bought into them as a kid. Like, oh my God, that's crazy. I can't believe it. And then as an adult, it's like, that's not true. Like even, without the internet to verify that's not true, I would still today be like, that's not true. Like there's no way.
Yeah. Like physically that wouldn't make any difference.
Right. No. Yeah. He still has a spine though, right? Like that's still in there. Yeah.
Yep.
No, but yeah, I completely agree that has been a common problem of it's generational, and it is it just speaks to the fact that as people age and one group ages out and one group ages in, the older people of each generation are okay with the thing that the previous group were not, but they've got a new thing to vilify. I don't want to get too socio-political and religious, on here, but that's that evangelical right sells fear. And if they can't
Oh,
find
yeah.
something to scare you into their church with, they don't have anything to sell you. And if they don't have anything to sell you, no one walks into their church doors.
That's
So
it. That's it. I think it was Jerry Falwell that back in the 80s when Mattel screwed up and put a G.I. Joe voice module in a Barbie doll. They had a fucking cow. Jesus,
yeah.
Mattel is trying to turn everybody gay.
I remember
with
in the
their
2000s when the first Spider-Man movie came out, I went to visit my grandpa, and my grandpa was in his 70s. You know, and he had no idea. He thought Spider-Man was just a dumb thing kids were into, and he was watching the 700 Club or some shit,
oh
and they
god,
were showing how Spider-Man does this to shoot his webs, and that's a sign of the
those are the
devil.
horns of the devil.
Yeah, so Spider-Man is satanic, and kids going to see that Spider-Man movie is leading them to the devil.
Yep,
And he
he
told me
wears
that, and
red.
he just told me that, and like he didn't understand what he was describing to me. He
Yep.
had no frame of reference, but he did know what the TV told him. And he's like, "Oh," I was like, "Yeah, I went and saw that Spider-Man movie." And my grandpa's like, "You shouldn't be watching that. That's about the
Yep.
devil." And I was like, "What the fuck are you talking about?"
Oh, good old Pat Robertson.
Yeah,
I know way too much about the 700 Club and
oh.
the evangelical right.
I know more than I want to, and I'll leave it at that.
I'm with you there. But yeah, going into so when EC Comics was really in its heyday, that was when the two filmmakers / three, right? I'm gonna throw a third one in here once we start talking about the movie that has been huge ever since. But I don't think gets enough credit for this movie. George A. Romero and Stephen King were both growing up at this time, right? With Stephen King, it's pretty obvious. Just because you see those 1950s, early 1960s childhood scenes and the way he writes kids during that time frame is just, I mean, he nails it. Reading a Stephen King childhood story set in the 50s is like sitting down and listening to my dad tell me a story across a bar. And EC Comics is really the where they got their start. That's the trash that Stephen King's mom let him read, right? It's the satirical nutrition, as it were, that George A. Romero took into Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead, which are the two major films that he had out at the time. So it's just, a lot of people want to sit there and go, oh, well, Carrie was Stephen King's start and Night of the Living Dead was George A. Romero's start. But really, if you trace it all the way back, these guys they're artifacts of the pre-World War II America as far as their views go. I mean, agree, disagree?
I would say that like watching a Christmas Story gives you a vision of like what was that set in, like 1930s, America,
Yep.
1950s, I guess was what that was supposed to be set in.
Was it late 40s, early 50s?
Yeah, I love that movie. I love Christmas Story. I love that setting in Wisconsin in that time. I'm from Northern Illinois, and that kind of scenery and weather is kind of what I grew up with as well. But that like good old fashioned like who's the artist that did all the old sketches?
Not Warhol. No, Warhol.
Not Warhol.
Did the Campbell soup cans and whatnot?
Yeah, it's not Warhol.
That's
Warhol was anyway, it doesn't matter. But that like
Warhol was the blonde
that
guy.
Americana period in America that we looked at so wistfully, that what they were trying to capture when they made Happy Days, you can definitely hear that and see that in King's voice and in the way that early Romero works portray American culture and the people in those movies.
So do you think Romero lost it at some point during his career, or did he just stop focusing on it?
I don't think Romero lost it at some point in his career. I think that the world moved on and Romero didn't.
Fair enough.
I think that he did what made sense at the time. And when the time changed, he continued to make what he knew and just didn't resonate with the audience at that point.
Gotcha. So that's why Land of the Dead went.
Because like real horror fans, people that really love Romero stuff, they're not watching Land of the Dead saying like this is a great piece of zombie horror movie. You know, it's
Right.
just that it didn't do well. It doesn't carry the notoriety that Night of the Living Dead did.
Yeah.
So I would say that seemed it's more like Romero still had it, just what he had wasn't what people wanted.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Because then you come to
Interesting.
the future when he remade all of those, and you got Night of the Living Dead, the more updated one, and
Yeah.
Dawn of the Dead, all of that, which Romero still had a hand in and helped make.
My favorite zombie movie of all time.
And he updated them, and they work. Like they
Yep.
just work. So I just think that he stuck with what he knew, and he stuck with it for too long. And he, people were still giving him money to make what he knew, and it just didn't catch fire the way the original did.
Yeah, kind of like it's the John Carpenter effect that we're seeing right now.
Yep.
Where he's just kind of just sign me a check, and I'll score something or give you rights to one of my films, but I don't want to just do it.
Yeah, it's like if and forgive me because I don't know this, but it would be like if the guy that made Citizen Kane tried to make a sequel to Citizen Kane about another character in that time period akin to Citizen Kane, and he put it out in like 1985.
That's fair.
Even if it was half as good as Citizen Kane, it's going to fall dead in that market.
Yep. It's got a 3-wheeler named Rosebud instead of a sled.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Good deal. That's an interesting point. I've never thought about it that way. That he just kind of clung to the messaging that he had in the 70s and didn't really move on to it. Because I could see, and I know we're way off target as far as the Creepshow, the movie, but we'll get back to it. Mm-hmm. Looking at King's work, past really Creepshow and going all the way through, It in 1986, Eye of the Dragon in 87, really all the way up until Dolores Claiborne, which I think came out in 92. His messaging didn't change a whole lot either, but I wonder if the difference was that King's audience was so much broader than Romero's that it seemed to stick more, even though mass market may not agree.
I would say if you wanted a good snapshot, beginning, middle, and I wouldn't say end, but to the modern King, it's Dark Tower. Not to delve from his horror stuff to his fantasy stuff, but
I would agree with that.
Gunslinger he wrote when he was 18 years old.
Yeah, as a short story, it was serialized.
Yeah, and look at the way that story and those characters and the way he weaves a narrative changes, because he worked on Dark Tower through his entire career.
Up until 2003.
Right. So you look at those pieces, and I'm going to draw another comparison here that is so far off from our original topic, but still holds still holds true to what I'm saying here. But if you look at it, like I picked up the Dark Tower, the first book. I picked it up a long time ago and I read it, and then I never read the rest of his books. And then a friend of mine was really, really into it and was telling me all about it. And I said, you know what, I'm going to read them all. So then after the last book came out, which is what's the last one? Was it Song of Susanna?
The Dark Tower.
The Dark Tower.
Yeah, book 7.
But after the last one was already out, I read the whole series, and you get such a, like, how rough the first one is compared to how good it is by the end. And you got fucking tears streaming down your face for Eddie. And like, there's just, you're so broken by the end of it. And it's like, I would never have felt that way in that first book. You did not have me there, but by the end, you're weaving a tapestry of feelings, emotion, characters, a fully fleshed out world where all sorts of insane stuff's going on. And it's like, the Stephen King that played, I forget the character's name, but
Jordy Verrill.
Yes, the Stephen King that played Jordy Verrill in the movie and the Stephen King that wrote The Dark Tower are two entirely different people.
Oh God, yeah. The guy that played Jordy Verrill and the guy that wrote Maximum Overdrive, I don't think was capable of even writing Wizards and Glass, which came out in what, 96?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a clear trajectory for King. We could do an entire series on Stephen King.
And the other comparison that I will draw to this, and like I said, it's way off the mark. Like we're so far away from what we started talking about, so we don't have to keep this topic going. But I watched all of what was out at that point up to like last year of One Piece, which was over 1,070 episodes. I watched them all in a 3-month period, and to go from that first episode,
did you sleep?
A little. I don't sleep much anyway. I very rarely sleep, and that's just that's my own thing. I don't have a healthy relationship with sleep. Anyway, it makes me really manic. But from that first episode that you get, that's in classic like 1990s. I don't remember the term for square form.
4-3.
Yes. Yep. And starting there, whenever Dragon Ball Z in the United States, when anime in the United States was in its infancy of popularity and very niche at the time compared to what it is today, and going from those original voice recordings what is great that it's the same cast, but going for those original voice recordings, they scream constantly, like they don't talk. They're trying to get these very dramatic what every other anime at the time was doing, fucking annoying as shit, so hard to watch. And to watch that evolution in a 3-month period of 20 plus years of a television series, and watch the technology change, the art style change, the way that Oda wrote his story, the way that the audio performances work, the way they handle like the Foley art on it, and everything changing so dramatically over those 20 years, but getting it in a snapshot of a 3-month period, it just shows you how far anime has come. And if we had stayed at that like Ocean dub original, the anime we got here in the United States, it wouldn't be the thing that it is today. We would
completely
it would still be as niche as it was when I first got into it in my early late, like my preteens. So I can say that for horror, you have some of the seminal greatest directors and writers of our not even our generation, the previous generation, still working, still writing, still creating things. But those first, like the things that moved the needle so much and changed things so much were really great when they dropped, and they were new and they were awesome. But whenever people continued to evolve that medium, and they kept telling the story the way they did to begin with, because it's what they got famous off of, it just stagnated,
Yeah, it did not. The older stuff has not aged well. I mean, you can take it all the way back to the Universal monster movies, right, of the 30s and 40s. You watch those now, and they're laughable. They're essentially comedies.
Yes, when Bela Lugosi was supposed to be absolutely fucking terrifying as the Mummy, and then God, my brain is not working today. What are the Laurel and Hardy? And then he's also the Mummy in Laurel and Hardy Meet the Mummy, and it's the exact same character. Like that's a very different time in America. You're not going to have
very much so.
You can't you won't have Gary Oldman's Bram Stoker's Dracula showing up to do a bit with Penn and Teller in like a television series, and us be like, wow, that was really funny, totally great.
Absolutely, I would watch that.
I'd watch it. It'd be a nightmare. It'd be weird as shit. That Vlad Dracul from Bram Stoker's Dracula is not a redeemable character that you're like, let's hang out and see him have a good time.
No, not by any stretch.
What the fuck are you trying to pass off here? This guy is like one of the worst characters. He's literally the devil. Like, what are you doing?
Yep, I'm with you. So yeah, circling back around, and we will do tangents like this all night if you let me. Again, not super structured. I'm here for the conversation.
I'm in.
So by the time we get to Creepshow, right, basically, Max Gaines has gone on and done Mad Magazine starting in the mid-50s. That's where he went. So EC Comics essentially became Mad Magazine because he could skirt the comics code, because it was no longer a comic outside of Spy versus Spy. Still do the same kind of satire, everything else. And then here come two of the fathers of modern horror. And I say modern horror because if we go back far enough, you start to see Mary Shelley, for me, even though a lot of people want to tag her as the mother of science fiction. She was, in a way, but she was also the mother of horror. right? And then you get into Jules
Gasly.
Verne, you get into H.P. Lovecraft, horror's favorite racist, which is another episode
Yes.
I'll
Good
have to do.
old-fashioned bigotry.
Oh man, the xenophobia in that guy. Holy shit. You'd have think the only alien he had ever met was a xenomorph. But really, when it comes to modern horror and our generation and the generations after us, I think the two names that are really going to stand out are going to be George A. Romero and Stephen King, right? And by the time they get to this film in 1982, George Romero has done Night of the Living Dead, which is a huge satirical piece aimed at racism and bigotry, especially in the Deep South.
Yep.
I mean, the last shot of Night of the Living Dead is fucking haunting.
Could you imagine surviving zombies and not surviving racism?
I would like to say no.
Exactly.
But unfortunately, yeah, I kind
of your two options, what's the more realistic danger in the United States?
I'm pretty sure it's racism.
I've been in a car during a traffic stop with black friends and been treated and experienced racism firsthand. I being in Missouri, which isn't the Deep South by any stretch, but God, do they want to be?
It's far enough off the coast that it can qualify.
But I have, lived in this area for 20 plus years. I have been, I'm a speed demon. I drive like I own the road, like any good American does. And, because my tax dollars pay for it. But, I've been pulled over by so many cops so many times and had like state troopers just have me come like hang out in their car with them and talk to them for a little bit because they were bored on a Saturday morning, and they pulled me over and they were like, you're good, and leave. And I've only one time experienced like being like fully frisked, having every bit of my stuff in the car and on my person searched, having a friend handcuffed and dragged off to jail. And it was me and my brother, who's black, and our friend, and we got pulled over and for almost nothing. Like we were like doing like 5 miles an hour over the speed limit, which is like, everybody knows the speed limit is 10 miles an hour over the speed limit. That's just the national speed limit. But we got pulled over. They drug us all out of the car, searched every bit of what we had, and in the like very bottom pocket of my friend's jacket, they found some little something that I could not tell you whether it was or was not, and I don't think they could either. But what they thought was some seeds from marijuana, and they handcuffed him and dragged him to jail for the night and threatened to piss test us both and put us in jail. And neither of us did anything. We were both straight edge. And they were like, would you pass a piss test if I took you to the police station? And I was like, yeah, I don't do anything. Like, and even if that guy does weed, like he can have it in his system. Like that's not even illegal. The only time in my life I've been treated like that by a police officer. I have argued with cops. I've screamed at cops for being idiots. Like, and I also, I'm not like I hate all cops. I have friends who are in the police force. My brother is a prison guard. And so it's, while I do fall under that ACAB idea, I think that as long as you're doing your job to the best of your ability and you're not being a fucking asshole, we can be respectful to each other. But that was the worst I've ever been treated, and it was absolutely blatant fucking racism, and it changed my perspective on it for sure. But yeah, that's unfortunately the world we live in, and so yes, it is far more likely and far more dangerous to have black skin in this country than it would be to have a zombie apocalypse.
Especially in a black and white movie, because that contrast is hard to get around.
Yes. Yeah. Very noticeable.
Racist jokes for the win, folks. But you also have, at that point, Dawn of the Dead, which was at that point a send-up of communism and fascism. Not the consumerism send up that we look at now with the new 2000. Jesus Christ, I said new. That's 21 years old, isn't it? Ish 2004. I
still think Foo Fighters is a new band. I mean,
I mean, Nirvana just broke up. Like, well, they didn't break up. Well, Kurt kind of broke up.
A lot of Kurt went a lot of places.
It did. He spread himself a little thin.
Jesus Christ. I didn't think you were going to top me, and then you did.
It's cool. We're going to get canceled. It's fine.
Yeah, well, it happens. What was I going to say? Oh, we went to see Green Day in concert, my wife and I, and
Hmm.
she's 12 years younger than I am. So whenever
Oh,
I
wow.
talk about old Green Day and new Green Day, if I'm talking old Green Day, I'm talking something off of Dookie, their first album,
Yep.
their first commercial album, and
Yep.
then if I'm talking new Green Day, I'm talking like American Idiot generation Green Day. And whenever
Which is
she's
20
talking new
years
Green Day,
old.
she means something they just put on the radio. And when she's talking about old Green Day, she's talking about American Idiot. And
Are they still doing new music?
yeah, I mean, they're still putting new songs out.
American Idiot is the last new album I remember from them.
And they were celebrating the 10-year anniversary when we saw them last year. So
Holy shit.
it's been out for a minute, but that's just how it goes, man.
I'm so old.
But anyway, so the new old Dawn of the Dead celebrated consumerism, or flew in the face of consumerism, I guess, not celebrated.
Yeah, which was a great flick. I think out of all of the films that Romero has been directly involved in, I'm not talking executive producer ties and things like that, but directly involved in, that is by far my favorite of the big four. Well, five, I guess. The Night of the Living Dead remake is in there as well. But he had done these two massive zombie films leading up to Creepshow. Stephen King, on the other hand, had already published Carrie, Salem's Lot, and The Shining, and all three of those had already been turned into motion pictures. So he was no slouch in his own right, even though his first book was only published 6 years prior. So he had three best-selling novels. I don't believe Carrie became best-selling until the re-release in the late 70s after the De Palma movie came out. But Kubrick certainly helped his sales, even though Kubrick.
Yeah, they hated each other.
Oh, and I'm The Shining for me is by far one of it is in my top 5 favorite horror films of all time. It is in my bottom 10 worst adaptations of all time.
Yes, it's very far off the mark.
It is not The Shining that we knew from the page, right? So King comes off of those three. Go ahead, Danny.
No, you're fine. I was going to go on a rant about Jack Nicholson, but I don't know that that's necessarily anything we need to do right now.
He's the perfect insane guy.
Jack Nicholson played a person who had been committed and was not necessarily clinically insane in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. The Nurse Ratched actress won an Academy Award for that movie. It was his first Academy Award winning film that he was a part of, and it was one of the first films he was ever in. And from that movie, Jack Nicholson has played one character his entire career. No matter what film he is in, he is playing that exact same character for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest in every role they have ever put him in. Now, is that just Jack Nicholson being Jack Nicholson? Maybe. I don't know what he's like sitting at home on a Wednesday watching television. But I can tell you that his Jack Napier Joker and his character in The Shining and every other fucking thing he's ever made, even including Anger Management, the comedy he did with Adam Sandler, has been the exact same character. He has just had this one guy forever.
He has only played one role that wasn't that same dude, and it was the astronaut in Terms of Endearment. That's the only one.
I don't know that I've ever seen Terms of Endearment, but I will take your word for it.
It's fine. Shirley MacLaine. It's a rom-com. You just skip it. I mean, it's good, but you don't need to.
Yeah.
There are better things to spend 2 hours of your time on.
Yeah, I probably catch up on something else I actually want to watch.
Yeah, it's not great. So
I'm sure there's a YouTube video that breaks it down to a couple of minutes.
Probably. But all right, so you've got these two masters of horror, which I don't think either of them had the title at this point, right? I don't think King became the master of horror really until the mid 80s.
I would say his popularity with it is what drove him to that.
I would agree with that. I think 86 is really when he took off. After Cujo, Christine, and It, I think, are the three novels that really set him on fire. Like, the first three did a great job of establishing his brand. But those three, I think, are the ones that really. I mean, Cujo still fucking terrifies me. Pet Cemetery is the darkest thing I have ever read in my life.
That was a weird
and I've read the
place
Bible.
that was a weird time in his life too, because he was playing with what he could do artistically, and when he wrote Cujo, he was trying to follow the writing method of write drunk, edit sober.
Yep.
And he took it to the furthest extreme that he could. And when he was writing Cujo, he was so drunk he could barely see the page he was writing on when he was writing it. And he would wake up the next morning hungover and read what he'd written the night before and be like, what the fuck did I write?
Right. Right. That's when he started his cocaine habit too. But
that's true.
Yeah. Stephen King could be another. Holy shit, could we spend hours talking about
that man?
That
has done some shit. Yeah, for sure.
Oh my God. Yeah, he is the Keith Richards of writing.
he needs someone to know that comparison was made for him.
So you've got these two guys that come in to Creepshow. But the guy that I think often gets overlooked in this whole thing is Tom Savini, who did all of the physical effects for this film. I mean, he was coming off of Friday the 13th and a few other films that he had done. He stepped into this, and the first one that they had him work on was Father's Day, which is not an effects light section, right? So just to take it back for a second. So Creepshow is actually it's an anthology film, which is essentially what the comic books were, right? Every Creepshow comic, or excuse me, every Tales from the Crypt comic, Vault of Horror, all of that stuff, was an anthology. They were built up of smaller horror stories within a comics format that normally had, some form of satire and some form of moral at the end, right? And they just jumped into this, with both feet. So they bring in Tom Savini, and the first scene out of this movie that he works on, and actually within the film itself, is Father's Day, which is essentially a zombie revenge tale. I mean, if you've ever heard anybody say "Bedelia, you bitch," they've seen this movie. That is I want to say that is probably the most quotable line out of this section.
It's pretty fucking quotable. I want my cake.
And a young Ed Harris with hair.
What was it?
Ed Harris with hair.
Yes.
Which I think is something that not many people remember from this section of the film.
Yeah, he's like Patrick Stewart, man. Nobody remembers that guy with hair.
No. The thing is, Patrick Stewart, I don't think, ever had hair. He came into this world bald, and he'll probably go out of it bald.
Even in his I don't even know how old he was then. What, 40s? Whenever he did Dune, the first Dune movie, and he was bald in that. He had like the little frock of hair, and then
he had the muck hawk going on.
Yeah.
But so digging into the movie a little bit more here with Father's Day, right? What were your overall thoughts on that section of it? Did you like what they were doing? Did you not?
I liked. So Father's Day does a lot. It's a little weird, in that, especially because I just rewatched it like right before we went live, and it had been a minute. So what was weird for me is that there's nothing about Ed Harris's character that makes me think, I hope something horrible happens to this guy.
Right.
He seems all right. He's unfortunately married this really rich lady that he's got, he really likes her, and she's a partier, and, they've got kind of a wild life, and he's like, cool. And she's fucking rich, and I'm going to go hang out with her crazy ass family for Father's Day. And then he gets told this crazy story about how their great aunt murdered their grandpa. And he like kind of sits there. He's like, okay, yeah, I'm sure that's all true. And then he goes outside to like lay down in a cemetery and smoke a cigarette or whatever, like as any person is wont to do.
That's what I did in the early 80s.
Yeah, absolutely. And then gets fucking the thing where like, okay, this is horror 101, but when the tombstone starts to rock back and forth, and he lays there for a good like 45 seconds watching it instead of just fucking moving. That's a little unbelievable. But other than that, when Ed Harris died, I was like, really him? Like out of everyone, like why him? Like why wouldn't he be the survivor of this story? The only other problem I have is we know, listening to the story, that this girl got revenge on her father for killing the man she loves. So she like had victory over this reprehensible, awful, this rich man who took the love of her life away from her. And it's like, good on her for standing up for herself and doing something about it. So the revenge aspect of the story is so hard to get behind that it's all around just like leaves you feeling a lot of moral questions about how you should feel about this story, which may be the intent. I don't know.
And that's what I was about to ask. If you thought that was intentional on the part of King, because he wrote this entire script. It's the first one that he ever wrote. And then he just turned over the directing to Romero. So do you think that was a Romero thing? Or do you think it was a King thing?
It doesn't seem to be a Romero thing. It definitely seems more like King's vein of bad things happen to good people.
Yes.
And the world is just fucked. So there's no karma doesn't save you, which is, I think, a heavy theme throughout King's books, which I'm not the most knowledgeable King writer, but
we could fix that.
Or King reader. But from what I know of his works, if you love a character and they seem to be pretty good and you're like attached to them, he's gonna fucking kill them. It's not the good guys that stick around in King stories. It's usually some kind of unrepentant asshole who happens to be the one that is in the role of the protagonist. And so I think I guess if I had to like summarize that whole story down to it's like the most granular level, it would just be like even in post-death revenge stories, the characters' motivations can be as chaotic as everything else in life is.
Which makes sense.
Usually when you're looking at a revenge story where somebody comes back from the dead, I'm looking at The Crow as a good example, but usually it's to get revenge, and that you're on the morally correct side going into the revenge part, and that's what makes the revenge enjoyable. And this story, Father's Day, does not give you any of that. You're just left fucking floating in the middle trying to figure it out.
100%, 100%. And why in the hell did he have a cane if he had a stroke and he was stuck to a wheelchair?
Yeah, he might have. I'm
not going to go nearly as deep as you did with this one, but why? Why? All he did was bang that cane against the armchair and yell at his daughter that he had, quote unquote, chosen to take care of him. What an asshole.
I would say, as him being the asshole that he is, and it being so easy to get away from him, he liked to have the cane so he had a little more reach when he was hitting people.
That's fair. That's fair.
It was like a shillelagh. It was his implement of revenge at the time.
That's fair. My dad walked with a cane, and I've been caught around the ankle with one a couple times when he was going to beat my ass, but I would outrun him.
I know that if I was that gentleman, that geriatric fuck, having had a stroke and being stuck to a wheelchair, the reason I would want my cane is because it has a sword blade in it. But I can't say as to whether that was his motivations or not. I would assume for him, it was to hit and move and be more of an asshole than he could be as a wheelchair-bound individual.
That's a good point. That's a good point. So, scale of 1 to 5. Father's Day. That story just in and of itself. What are we thinking? For me, it's a 2.
Really?
Yeah. I was not a fan of this one.
If we're rating it on horror stories and what where it fits in the horror genre, I'm with you on that. Maybe 2.5. It was not great. there's a reason it's one people don't really talk about.
Yep.
I forgot it was even in the movie. Out of all, I remembered every other story that is in Creepshow but that one. It is so easy. Like, my brain just wiped it away. I didn't remember that Ed Harris was in this movie. I didn't remember this whole thing went down. For out of all of them, the one that left me with the most questions and really evaluating the story after watching it this time, I might give this one a 5 for just leading me to be curious about what Romero and King were thinking when they put this together, who was responsible for what they were really trying to say. Because you almost get like a very, I don't want to say primordial, but I guess that works well enough. A primordial Stephen King in this story. There's a lot of elements that extend to his later stories, like it starting with fucking Georgie being murdered by a giant insane clown. Like, you know, it seems like that willingness to take to murder the sacred cattle was very evident in this one story.
I agree with
all of them.
I agree with that. And that's why, so when you made the comment before about not really knowing what direction they were trying to take this, right? Or who was, you know, the driving force behind it. This one, first watching it, sitting down and seeing this pop up on screen, my mind immediately went to, all right, they've done their serious shit. This is just them fucking having fun. But then we get to the second one.
Right.
Which is, if I remember right, the downfall of Jordy Verrill. I don't know if that's the correct title or not. I think it is.
It's the slow death.
The slow death of Jordy Verrill.
Or is it the lonely death of Jordy Verrill?
The lonely death. That's right.
The lonesome death of Jordy Verrill.
Yep.
Thankfully, I have the comic to reference,
which is outstanding. Because I do not write shit down. But so this one really threw me off, right? Because you get from just dumb physical effects zombie flick with no meaning really that I could derive from it, other than just how can a zombie kill some people because he wants some cake? How funny would that be to put on screen, right? And then you get to the lonesome death of Jordy Verrill, which to me is it's King's first attempt at leveraging his love of H.P. Lovecraft to put something on screen, because this is obviously a send up of The Color Out of Space. Are you familiar?
I thought that exactly when I was watching it again. The first time I saw this, I wasn't familiar with Color Out of Space. But this time I am familiar with it. Basically because my best friend, who he would be the better person to talk to between he and I, he is a horror buff, like fully fucking horror buff. He knows everything about everything, but he's a shy little boy and he will not get on a camera for anything. I've tried to get him on Cutting Edge Hero for years just to talk about some nerd shit, and he won't do it. But he has like, and I don't want to spend too long talking about my best friend, but he's insane. But he has a full leg tattoo done by a really incredible local artist that we have. And one leg from the bottom to the top is all Universal movie monsters.
Oh, that's
so from his
dope.
ankle to the top of his hip. And then on the other leg, he has the more like Stephen King horror elements with like stuff from Creepshow, but it's also his whole leg top to bottom. As a matter of fact, it's on the artist's Instagram page, and I will send it to you. But the reason I'm telling you this is because he has such a collection of horror like memorabilia, very similar to my collection back here, but on a much bigger scale for horror. And he traded some of his horror shit, dolls that he's collected and different action figures and stuff that he's had throughout the years. He traded part of his collection to this artist to get all this tattoo work done. Like,
that's awesome.
He just has such a crazy collection of shit. And anyway, but I forget where I was going before I brought up my other better half. But
Color Out of Space. You're talking about.
He showed me. That's what it was. He showed me Color Out of Space. He was like, "You got to watch this," and that's how because I didn't read the
new
Lovecraft
Nick Cage
story.
movie.
Yeah, he showed me the Nick Cage movie when it came out.
Oh, so good.
Yeah.
So good. So for folks that don't know, The Color Out of Space is a short story written by H.P. Lovecraft, who I always call horror's favorite racist. I don't know if anybody else calls him that, or if they call him that son of a bitch from the 20s. But that's how I know him. And he wrote a story called The Color Out of Space, which was essentially about a meteor that crash lands in a farm, the farm of named Gardner. And this meteor then begins to change the environment around it. Fruits grow larger, but they're not edible. Animals begin to show really weird signs. They grow larger, but they don't act the same way. I think at one point there's a jackrabbit the size of a pit bull or some such shit. It crazy Lovecraft shit. The lonesome death of Jordy Verrill is very much The Color Out of Space, but focused almost solely not on the effect that the meteor has on the environment, but on the effect it has on the individual who touches it and attempts to or dreams about selling it to the meteor department of his local college. And this person is played by Stephen King. I believe this is the first of his cameos in his horror movies.
I believe it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and he camps it the hell up in this one. Like this is campy as hell, from the special effects to the act. I mean, it's fucking Stephen King acting. You know it's going to be campy.
Even how stupid this character has to be.
Oh my
To be
god.
like, I'm gonna take it to the university and have them look at it, and I ain't gonna accept nothing less than $200. Lord, I'll pay off some of these.
$200.
I'll pay off some of these loans I got. You got
Hell
a
yeah.
$200 fucking loan you can't pay off, Jordy. You got bigger problems, bud.
And then the professor's
got
like,
some
"We'll
meteor
give you."
shit on me.
Professor's like, "We'll pay you $50." Hell no, professor. You're gonna give me that 200, or I ain't selling you shit. I do love the Gimli moss beard.
Yeah. Yes.
That he grows in this. So essentially what happens is that the entire area around the farm, spoiler alert for a movie that's now 43 years old.
Yep.
Jesus
I
Christ.
can verify.
Oh, basically moss just starts growing on everything, including Jory Verrill. So this one, for me, this was very much looking at it within the scope of the film itself. This was a 4 out of 5 for me. Like this is easily number 1 or number 2 out of the 5 stories in this movie.
It for what the rest of the film is about, it is the most fun in the film.
Oh, so
in the whole
enjoyable.
movie, it's the most fun.
Yes.
So for a brief bit of levity, it's great. If I was judging it solely on its horror chops, I might because I believe that's what we were judging Father's Day on, right?
Yes.
Okay. Judging it on its horror chops, it's rough. It's fucking slapstick comedy with the guy blowing his brains out at the end. He does the old he maybe, to take it back to a previous joke, maybe that was his Kurt Cobain's inspiration.
That was King's Cobain moment.
Yeah. Because like also, and I don't know if we can see this.
Creepshow was King's Courtney Love. That's dark, Danny.
I mean, I would rather give it to King than Courtney Love. She doesn't deserve to be mentioned ever.
That's fair.
But if you can see it in the comic, it's really hard to get to focus on it. In the comic, he blows the side of his head off. And in the movie, you don't get to see any of the gore. It's hidden under the green, and he shoots himself like up underneath it. Which, maybe Stephen King wasn't up to acting an actual like blew my head off death, or they wanted to save a little money on the special effects since they've blown everything on flocking the entire fucking set. But it's even in the moment when Jordy dies, they leave the horror out of it. So for horror, like a 1. I don't know. It's so low on what it does for horror. Now, for comedy bits in the middle of a horror film, like I'm gonna put it right there with how morally conflicted I was with Father's Day. It's a 5. It's fucking great. It's one of the reasons why Creepshow works. In the middle of what is a fun horror jaunt, they took the time to give Stephen King a goofy redneck character death. I don't know. I loved it. I love it, even if it's not good horror.
Dude, it's so much fun. And it's like, so I just did the review of Fear Street Prom Queen. And this movie has been getting so much shit from the horror fandom about being a terrible slasher. And I'm like, I laughed my ass off for an hour and a half watching this thing. Like, why is that not okay anymore? Like, are you seeing that in it? Because you cover a far broader spectrum of fandom than I do, right? Are you seeing that anywhere else in the
I am
anime,
seeing
comic
it
books, Star
in
Wars?
everything. I am
No
seeing
kidding.
it in everything. And I will tell you what the problem is.
Oh, please, God.
For my money, this is what I think the problem is. And tell
Is
me
it
if
us?
you
Is it
agree with
YouTube
this.
people?
I don't think it's YouTube people.
Okay.
I can tell you what it is in the superhero world, and I think it's the same for the horror genre.
Okay.
There are, when you look back on classic slasher films, and when you look back on the original Friday the 13th, when you look back on the original Halloween, when you look
They're all
back,
horrible.
especially the original Nightmare on Elm Street, which as a kid, when I was 5 years old, Nightmare on Elm Street terrified me.
Oh, God, yeah.
As an adult rewatching it, I laughed through the whole fucking thing. It's hilarious. And I'm rooting for Freddy, the character that used to scare the shit out of me. I'm rooting for the murderous pedophile who haunts people and kills them in their dreams. And I shouldn't be doing that. But it's so fucking funny. And I hate those kids in those movies so much. But they're shit. Those movies suck. By almost every metric, they suck, other than the fact that they're fucking fun. And it's just some gory horror shit that's fun to watch. And so I will say the same thing with nerd stuff. Like any horror nerds and comic nerds are the same nerds. We're just in different genres, and some of us cross over. I don't cross over as heavily as I probably should, but I definitely lean more into superheroes and giant fucking kaijus. But I love Godzilla. Absolutely love any movie that gives me a giant creature running into another giant creature. I don't give a fuck about the plot because I didn't give a fuck about the original plot in Godzilla, and I still love it. The problem that we are experiencing is that people like you and I who love these things because we actually love them are few and far between compared to people who really love horror because of the horror masterpieces that have been collaborative efforts starting in the shit that we enjoyed when it was shit and nobody else liked it, to where they have perfected the art form to where these things are basically masterpieces. And so, not that I've seen a Friday the 13th that's ever been a fucking masterpiece, but the idea that they have arguably gotten better throughout they've dipped in quality in some places, but they've arguably, horror as a genre has gotten smarter, it's gotten better, it's gotten higher budget, it's gotten better writers, it's gotten more attention. King Kong, Godzilla, those movies all suck, but I love them. You get to like the modern age and you've got like Godzilla 1, which blows everybody's fucking mind with how good it is. But also you've got King Kong versus Godzilla. Now,
which is fun.
Do I love that they're shameless cash grabs? Not a bit. Do I love that King Kong and Godzilla are in the same movie doing King Kong and Godzilla shit? Absolutely. My inner child could not be more excited.
Yep.
And so I have the same problem with Marvel and DC films. I don't think Zack Snyder's DCEU was incredible. I'm certainly not a give me the Snyderverse back. Do I hate them? Fuck no. You give me Superman and Batman doing some shit on the screen, I don't care who's playing them. Yep. Is Batman and Robin a fucking piece of shit? Absolutely. Do I still love watching it? Sure. Arnold Schwarzenegger is Mr. Freeze. Terrible casting. Do I like seeing it? Sure. I watch the movie regularly. It's great. So then you.
I hope you don't catch a cold.
Yeah. Have an ice day. Fucking best line in the movie. But then you get masterpieces like Endgame and Infinity War, which for me, I still don't think they're masterpieces. I think there's a lot of hand waving in places where there needed to be actual story.
There was a lot of fan service in those films that carried them.
But people are like, oh, this isn't anything like Endgame. Well, no shit, it's not anything like Endgame. But also the original Fantastic Four movie from the 80s that they never released, that's nothing like Endgame either. You want to know how many times I've watched that? About 15.
Yep.
I think it's fucking hilarious, and also it's a superhero movie. I don't care.
I hate to admit this on live, but Monos, The Hand of Fate.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've watched that at least 100 times.
Bad movies that tried to be good movies don't make them bad to watch. You know, does it take itself too seriously? Absolutely. Was somebody trying something with every bit of their ability? Yeah. Do I think every single film needs to be Winter Soldier, my favorite superhero film of all time? No. And I want you to know I don't even like Captain America. But do I want every single film that comes out to be Winter Soldier? No. I just want people to tell stories and to have fun doing it. I want to have a good time. And I don't always
Trevor got it.
go to sit down and watch a movie because I want it to be the greatest thing I've ever seen. Sometimes I just want some mindless entertainment
Yes.
because life is hard and shit
Oh, God,
sucks. And I just want to see some flashy superheroes on the screen doing dumb shit. And it's the same with the horror genre. I don't always need them to be cerebral mind fucks that leave me wondering whether life is worth living. Sometimes I just want to see a dude with a big fucking machete killing some teenagers.
Yep. Jason X.
And people get so fucking Jason X is a great example. When I said that the slasher films took a dip in quality, Jason X was exactly what I was thinking of.
Oh, it's so good.
It is a Friday the 13th movie that spoofs Friday the 13th movies.
It's my second favorite movie in the entire franchise.
Yeah. So I think the problem is that those of us who love this shit because we love it and not because we love the best version of it come up against people that are on board because their life was changed by one of these things.
Yes.
And they want them all to be that life changing because it's like fucking doing heroin the first time. They're chasing that high.
What's that like, Danny?
Doing heroin the first time. If I ever do, I'll let you know.
Oh, please do. I've been curious, but
yeah, I've let for someone who has pushed his body through some of the craziest things that a human being can do. For someone that has lived a fairly rough life, I have lived also a fairly clean edge life. I didn't start drinking till I was 26.
Badass.
And I've been sober for almost 4 years now, so I didn't drink for very long. Not that I didn't fucking catch up very quickly, but I came in too hot and then had to come back out. But I smoked weed a handful of times. I'm 420. I'm 420 friendly in that I'm cool with you doing it, but I don't care for it. It just makes me sleepy, so I don't really care for it.
Nothing but respect for that.
I don't do anything hard, really. And it's not like I'm like, oh, I lead a clean life. Jesus loves me. I've never really had an interest in it. That being said, I think people are just chasing that high of the really good ones, but they didn't do the groundwork. Like, it's like the idea of you having to like put in the work and like earn your way to the spot. Those of us who, got beaten up and shoved in lockers when we were little because we had a love for things no one else had a love for, who grew up to be in a time where it's now in vogue to be into these things, have a very different understanding and experience of these genres and properties than those who are just getting to celebrate it now that it's popular. So I'm not saying that's the wrong way. I'm just saying you have to have some perspective. And I think a lot of these people don't.
So then let me ask you this question then. Who, looking at it from that standpoint, which I 100% agree with, right? At that point, who becomes the gatekeepers then? Is it us not respecting the new fan because they didn't go through the same thing? Or is it the new bandwagon fan who is unwilling to see it from our point of view with regards to, quote unquote, the struggle that we went through being a fan of these things?
I think it would be very easy for us to become gatekeepery about it.
100%.
That being said, I think it's out of our hands. I think we don't have the ability to gatekeep these things.
Really?
I think the problem that we are going to run into is that, and it's not as big of a problem as it seems. The problem that we're going to run into is that we are in a golden era for this kind of cinema enjoying its popularity. I don't think it's the golden era of horror films. I don't think it's the golden era of superhero films, but I think we are in the golden era for their popularity. I think this
Of
is
fandom. You think this is it?
I think it's. I don't think it's it, but I think it's for at least for this period. This is their 15 minutes. This is their moment in the sun.
Okay.
And I think that what we are going to get is that while these are multi-billion-dollar films and that people were turning out in droves to watch these films and they have Hollywood's attention right now,
Mhm.
I think that what we are going to see is that eventually it is no longer going to be as popular as it was. It's going to go along the wayside. It's not going to be the big trend anymore.
That's
Studios
fair.
are going to stop pumping money into it, and it's going to go down to being smaller, cheaper, more fan-generated content that goes back to the stuff that we love.
From the
And
late 70s
so
and
we're
early
going to
80s.
have another lull where we will have a beautiful time for us as fans of this to enjoy the more or the less popular versions before it comes back up again. So I think that
Gotcha.
we are riding the crest of the wave right now. I don't necessarily, for my own money, I don't want to gatekeep anything from anyone. I think everybody's opinions on these are valid. I do just want to caution people that you need to, if you want to say that you love, and I'm going to take this to the nerds, the superhero nerd side of things. If you want to say that you love Marvel Comics characters, that you love Wolverine, that you love the X-Men, that you love Deadpool, that you like the Avengers, that you think the Fantastic Four are cool, if you're on board that because of what you're getting right now, please do your fucking homework and watch the shit that set this up, that we've all loved for 20 plus fucking years. Or longer. For me, it's 40 something. I've loved superheroes since my eyeballs started working. Do your homework and dive into that older shit and find an appreciation for it, because that's what we have to live on. It's nice while we're up here, but where we live is down here. This is where society wants us, and this is where we're going to come back to.
Yep.
We've been down here. This is stasis. This is where we're at now. So learn to love this, because this is where the good stuff is. And then you can celebrate this shit by understanding this shit. But if all you understand is this shit, then when we come back down here, you're going to be very disappointed.
Because
And
everything's
people are
going
going
to
to call you a fucking fair weather fan. And,
Yep.
and you're going to be like, well, no, you don't understand. I just really liked it when it was this way. Just give yourself some grace. Learn to love it for what it is, and not the shiniest version of it.
I love the fact that you said that. I love the fact that you said that, because taking a step away from the horror genre and Creepshow for a minute, when we look at the impact that phase 1 of the MCU had, and then looking at 2, 3, 4, and the fact that it constantly showed this downturn as far as popularity goes, that just showed to me immediately that people didn't give a shit about these characters, right? Because regardless of box office, you can't tell me that the Multiverse of Madness was not a fun fucking film to watch. It was enjoyable as shit.
And this speaks more to horror fans. Multiverse of Madness,
so good.
I've got a lot to say about that, and I won't go on a whole fucking tangent, but there are not really any Doctor Strange fans. There just aren't. Like,
I love Doctor Strange.
Yeah, people like Doctor Strange. People care for the character. I guarantee you don't have 1,000 comic collection of just Doctor Strange comics.
I don't.
Yeah, and most people don't. Like, you can
I've got every Ivan Reitman film, though.
You can love Doctor Strange. But that was a Sam Raimi movie. And it was a good Sam Raimi movie. And that did more for Doctor Strange than any fucking thing else I've ever seen with Doctor Strange in it. And I like Doctor Strange as an ancillary character who shows up in other people's books. I don't give a shit about Doctor Strange's main adventures. I couldn't tell you what a single one of them are.
Sir.
I honestly couldn't. I like
He's
him in
the
Marvel
Sorcerer
versus
Supreme, man.
Capcom. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's super important to the Marvel universe. That's why they pass his title to all sorts of other ancillary characters just to keep him relevant. But
Listen,
but no, the best part about Multiverse Madness is that it's a really good Sam Raimi film, like a really
so
good one.
good.
It's so,
So
fucking
good.
good. I love Army of Darkness. I love Evil Dead, and this is another example of fucking do your homework, man. If you went
Yeah.
into that and you were expecting it to be the next fucking Endgame, you're an idiot. That's not the movie Sam
No
Raimi
way.
makes.
No way. Go back and watch Drag Me to Hell, and then watch Multiverse of Madness after, and tell
I
me.
have never laughed so hard in a movie as I did in Drag Me to Hell.
Oh my god.
Laughed my ass off, and I was in the theater just fucking. I saw every setup as it came. I knew what was going to happen next, and I was fucking dying laughing because I knew it was going to happen. And everyone else in the theater was looking at me like I was a crazy person. Because they were watching a horror movie.
Nobody does dark horror comedy like Sam Raimi does. He's a fucking master.
He's so good. He's so
Which
good.
brings me back to our original topic, which I would love to see what Sam Raimi would do with a Creepshow film. Especially diving into a story like The Crate. So with The Crate, which I think was actually the 4th of 5 in this, I think The Hitchhiker followed it. And I want to say They're Creeping on You came in, or Something to Tide You Over came in prior to that.
Yeah.
So The Crate is, if you know anything about comedy music in the 70s and 80s, there was a gentleman by the name of Ray Stevenson who did a song that shit. I can't remember the name of it now, but it was basically a guy's walking down a beach. He sees a chest floating in the water. He picks it up. He opens it, and life goes fucking haywire. So he spends the rest of the song passing it on to other people. That is essentially what this little clip is. This stars Hal Holbrook, which threw me for a fucking loop because he has, up until Creepshow, I had never been aware of him playing anything other than very, very serious roles. And seeing him play this demure, I don't know how the TikTokers say it or if that's even a fucking thing anymore. But this very reserved, I'm going to use a not friendly term for YouTube, but this pussy whipped son of a bitch, who is constantly berated by his wife, and he finally finds a way to get rid of her, and it's through this orangutan thing
Whatever
that
the
comes
fuck that
out of the
thing
crate
is.
at a college.
Yeah.
And kills everyone. But like, I'm gonna look over this. I gotta find this Ray Stevenson song because I know what it is, but like I can hear it in my head.
So I don't know which story came first, and you could probably tell me, but there is a Tales from the Crypt episode with a story where there is a comic book artist and he has an overbearing wife who makes his life miserable, and she's like spending all of his money.
Yep.
And then there's a girl who comes to work with him, and they kind of fall in love. And he does these little comics where he draws these pictures of his wife, and she's like big and overbearing and like mean and crazy. And then she shows up one day where him and the girl are at work, and that character comes to life off the page and kills his wife. And those two stories are so similar. In kind of intent, that I rewatching this, that was immediately like I was like, holy shit, is this like that same idea? And then as the story got further, I was like, it absolutely is. That's what they're doing. So I like the story. I like the fact that there's just in this university, somebody somewhere on some excavation dig site put this thing in a box and shipped it to this university, and somebody put it underneath some stairs, not thinking about it. And it's just down there. You know, you would never get the origin of it.
Well, so that's part of what I find so interesting about it, right? So with this as a follow-up to The Lonesome Death of Jordy Verrill, you can obviously see Lovecraft you can see him acting as a muse for King in screenwriting this, right? So there's a story that Lovecraft wrote called the history of, oh, Jesus Christ. I swear to God, I'm better at this than I seem.
Dude, I am so lucky that I have a gaggle of people to do this shit for me every time I can't think of something. Usually before I can even look it up, somebody else can tell me what I'm trying to say. And I
Yeah, so
unfortunately cannot do that for you.
right. So basically, there's a story out there, facts concerning the late Arthur Germain and his family, right? Which is essentially the idea that this aristocrat goes to the Congo, runs into a species of white ape, because it's Lovecraft, which apparently the white ape is better than all of the other apes, and then crossbreeds, right? And the family continues along this line.
It was a
The
different time.
It's the fucking 1890s to 19. I think Lovecraft died in 1937
Yeah.
at 46 years old or some shit. But I mean,
Did he have
regardless,
syphilis?
people stopped using the N word in the 1820s. So fuck Lovecraft.
Yeah.
However, he wrote
Yeah.
the story, and it kind of, there's a scene in that story where one of the descendants of, or excuse me, one of the predecessors of Arthur Germain in the genealogy befriends an ape in a circus. The ape that he boxes in the circus hits him a little too hard, and Arthur's ancestor loses his shit, goes after this ape, and the ape fucking kills him. Just tears the shit out of him, right? This story reminded me so much of just that scene from the family history of Arthur Germain that I can't help but wonder if it wasn't King just following another Lovecraft trope.
Yeah. I could see that. King is like a lot of, I think, authors of his time. He comes from that class of authors that are, even though they were establishing a new genre of like what today is considered kind of like I mean, I can't think of the word I'm looking for. I don't want to say nerdy, but that you don't take people that are huge horror buffs to be stodgy old academicals. You don't take them to be people that are looking at Chaucer and seeing how they can fold him into their horror story, you know. But King comes from a generation where all of the authors were trying to fall into that, like, this is my magnum opus, and someday, like the Odyssey, people are going to be sitting around in blazers with leather elbow pads analyzing my work. Like, that's literally the intent behind what they were doing at the time. So they did their homework. They read
100%.
the old tomes that came before. So I guarantee you King knows Lovecraft inside and out, and probably wrote a dissertation on it. I don't know if that's exact. I don't know if that's true, but that's the period of authors where, you know, you think about like when J.R.R. Tolkien wrote Lord of the Rings, he decided to do an exercise in creating your own language and what that would look like.
Linguistics.
Yep. Yeah, it was a linguistics exercise.
Yep.
And he created a world that gave us such curiosity that it spawned the entire fantasy genre. And, you know, he was doing this with his friend C.S. Lewis and some other authors. They were just hanging around, you know, kicking around some ideas about these worlds where they could create their own rules.
Yep.
And they were doing them as academic research that turned into, you know, Lord of the Rings, and, you know, for more recent, you know, Stormlight Archive, and King is like that. That's where he's at. Like he sits down, he looks at the pieces of a story, the history of why they were written the way they are, where he can play and subvert expectations and classic parts of the trope. And that's where he kind of changed horror, or created horror and changed it as a whole compared to what had come before, like Jekyll and Hyde, or Barry Shelley's Frankenstein, or what stood for horror before, which was Dracula, and these stories of worlds where things just kind of went slightly off. And then King writes worlds that are absolutely fucking terrifying, where people, and oftentimes in King's work, it's almost always some sort of social commentary, where the humans, while there is some awful, terrifying thing happening that defies reality, the worst characters in his books are almost always normal human people who do the worst things that normal human people would do. And it makes the horror of it worse,
Eddie Bowers will always be a more effective antagonist to me than Pennywise will ever be.
Yeah, the guy that gave us Pennywise also gave us Stand By Me. It's
right.
What's the, I can't think of the name of it, but what's the story he wrote where the greasers drive off in their old hot rod and they die.
Sometimes they come back.
Sometimes they come back. Yep. And the horror element of that is that these awful greaser fucking people that would rather kill you than look at you, or want to be gangsters. They're wannabes. They're reprehensible, thugs that are wannabes. They're not real gangsters. They're not real criminals. They're not real they're high school kids. And they die in a wreck, and they decide to come back and terrorize these people's lives. But basically, they're normal people. So
sometimes they come back, starring one of the co-stars from Tremors and the star from all 15 Tremors sequels, by the way, who was also the Keaton father in Family Ties.
Yeah. I think we all know the star of Tremors was Reba McEntire.
100%. Co-starring Kevin Bacon.
Yes, absolutely.
In a cameo role.
She is 1 degree of separation from Kevin Bacon.
That's it. Until you get to the sitcom, and then shit goes haywire.
Yeah.
Well, but yeah, so to go back on your point before, with the fact that King is looking back on Lovecraft, and that generation of authors thought they would be writing the next Odyssey. I think a lot of people forget I think they forget the authors that existed from 1890 to 1940. I mean, you had Hemingway. You had Robert Bloch, who wrote Psycho. You had August Derleth, which gave us Lovecraft's stories. If it weren't for August Derleth, we wouldn't know who the hell Lovecraft was, right? You've got Robert E. Howard, who gave us the Conan novels. You've got, holy shit, Hazel Heald. You've got, Jesus, the Algernon Blackwood, for God's sakes, was still alive, who wrote the, was it The Willows? That he wrote, I think, that hit so hard.
I don't know. Off the top of my head, I don't know.
It's just the Arthur Machen, who gave us The Great God Pan. Like the authors that, and this is, I'm going to go off on a tangent here, right?
Please do. I think I've had enough tangents for one show.
Sorry. But we've got, I think a lot of people underestimate the impact that independent writers have on writers of the future, right? And when you look back at the generation, especially within horror, from the 1910s, 1920s, 1930s, right? Algernon Blackwood, Arthur Derleth, H.P. Lovecraft himself, Robert Bloch, right? And the impact that they had on Stephen King, who is currently our master of horror and has finally been recognized by academia as such, because horror is actually being treated as a true genre, as opposed to just some random shit like fantasy has been treated for so long, or sci-fi.
Right.
I'm not going to stay on the soapbox for long, but I want people right now that are working in those genres, or think about working in those genres, to understand that your impact could be more than just your sales and could be far more down the road than even your lifetime, right? Lovecraft hated 98% of his novels, and yet that 98% that he hated is what created, from an inspirational standpoint, the greatest author of horror that the world has ever seen is Stephen King. So just keep that in mind. M.R. James is another one.
I think it speaks to the idea, and I think it spans every genre. It does not matter
Yes.
what you are talking about, but art for profit creates no kind of lasting impact.
100%.
But art for art's sake leaves an indelible imprint, and that is whether you're bad at it or good at it. But you know, people will look at a simple egg tempura painting of a daisy on a fucking square this big for the next 1,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
But if you were making prints of a daisy because people like to buy daisies and you sell 5,000 of them, that's going to go in the waste bin eventually with everything else.
Right.
If you are writing novels or horror because you want to profit on it, you're probably not creating anything that's going to have a lasting effect. Now, if you are writing because you have stories inside of you and you need to put them on paper and you don't give a shit whether they ever sell, and that just happens to be a thing that happens and you're fortunate, but the reason you write is because you love to write, or because you love horror, or because you like the genre, or you like the properties, or you have ideas that you think would revolutionize that, like Stephen King, someday, somewhere, somebody after you're long gone is still going to be talking about it.
100%.
I think that's the big difference.
100%. And Lovecraft actually carried the same mindset. His whole idea was, art is what you write for yourself. If you're writing for the dollar, you're essentially a whore.
That is something that a lot of artists that I really respect have, and fortunately, we're fortunate enough, as opposed to being alive in Lovecraft's time or being alive in Dali's time. Well, I guess Salvador Dali's time was kind of in our time too, but
yeah, he died in the 70s, right?
Yeah, like I guess he just slightly before my time. But if we're talking about like Van Gogh, who died and never saw a penny for his work,
yep.
There was no way to distribute widely enough that he could find his audience. That's why it took so long. But we also live in a time where it's very, very easy to find your audience, even if you're a starving artist. And I think that let me grab this real quick. As Trevor Snobig recently mentioned, here's one right here who is writing.
Sanderson.
He's writing for writing's sake. He's telling stories because he has stories inside of him that he needs to get out, and he also happens to be making a fuck ton of money off of it. But the stories come
of money.
The stories come first, and he just happens to have found his audience. So yes, life before death, strength before weakness, journey before destination. Totally agree, Trevor. And I think that's another great thing about the time that we live in. We're very fortunate in that it's much easier to be an artist for art's sake and still find your audience while you're still alive. And I think that's King is one of those. Romero is one of those. They had a vision and it changed the world.
Hugely.
Yeah.
Hugely. I don't know that, again, like everything else, King will not get the credit for what he has actually done for literature, not the horror genre, but for literature, until he is long dead and gone, unfortunately.
I'll tell you about a recent victory of that, and it falls into horror, so you'll love this. At our Cape Con 2025, so last year's, it'll be 24, Cape Con 2024, last November, we had David Howard Thornton as our guest. And if you remember, In November, the end of October into November is whenever Terrifier 3 went head to head with Joker 2 at the box office, and this little niche independent film beat the fucking pants off of this Academy Award winning, a sequel to an Academy Award winning film.
It was beautiful.
And I had David Howard Thornton deserves all of the accolades. He's and not that he created this, but he did create art.
So good though.
But he is one of the nicest people I've ever met in my entire life. He's also incredibly genuine, incredibly down to earth, and very like meek, for lack of a better term. That man is not a lion of the industry. He's very happy to be doing the things that he does, and he loves being Art the Clown. Also, you could not imagine the guy that in one movie hacksawed a girl from her crotch to her forehead is the human being that is just. It seems like he wouldn't step on a fly if it flew under his foot. Like very not separating the art from the character. Anyway, but we were fortunate enough that we had booked him prior to the movie coming out. They didn't expect that it was going to do this.
Right.
And so last year at our show, we had the #1 star of the #1 movie in the country for like 3 weeks running.
Oh, so
that had
good.
just beaten a sequel to an Oscar-winning film. And so I got to do his panel, and I was sitting there and we were talking, and it just kind of occurred to me. Like I usually like learn a little bit about people, and then when I go into the panels, all the questions come off the top of my head. So I was sitting there talking to him, and we kind of got to talking about the film and stuff. And I was like, David, how does it feel to be a part of history, to be in Terrifier 3 at a time when we're seeing the growth of things like A24 and other horror, smaller independent film studios seeming to be the thing people actually want, and then seeing a cash grab like Joker that was expected to do big numbers absolutely falling on its face, and you being the star of a third installation in a very what was the word I was looking for? A very like a small horror film company, like their own studio or whatever.
Yeah.
And to be celebrating this kind of victory over him someday, when in the future, 50 years from now, when people are analyzing film and media at this point, your movie is going to come up as a topic of conversation. It's unavoidable now. It will definitely happen. How does that feel? And he was just like it had never occurred to him.
Like, why the fuck would you ask me that?
Yeah. Yeah. And he was like, it really, and then he went to like the stock answer that he was giving to people when they were asking how it felt to be in the #1 movie in the country. But I could see on his face at first, I asked him that question, and it had not even occurred to him that he was now a piece of cinematic history. And like it hit him, and he was just like, and I just imagined it was like that flying through space, like, like trying to figure shit out. But you could just see it on his face. Like he had not even thought about it. And it's true. It's absolutely true that, 50 years from now, 60 years from now, 100 years from now, whenever people are looking at this era in film and they're looking at what the trend was and what was happening to big budget films at the time, they're going to talk about Terrifier 3 championing over Joker 2 forever. Like it's just going to be a part of the story from now on.
David Howard Thornton and Damien Leone have revitalized the slasher genre, which has been dead realistically since Scream 3.
And
Scream 3 pretty much killed it, right?
It's hard to even celebrate Scream as a slasher film, knowing that it is a commentary on slasher films.
It's like a finger in the face of slasher films throughout history. It's just what it is, right? New Nightmare was the test bed for it. Let's see if we turn Nightmare on Elm Street meta and start poking fun at it, what happens? And then Scream happens and blows up. It's just these guys. I mean, holy shit! And now he's played Mickey Mouse. David Howard Thornton has played Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, I haven't gotten to see Screamboat yet, but he did his Mickey Mouse impression while he was at the show. It was pretty good.
It's entertaining.
Yeah.
I'll give it that.
Yeah. I want nothing but good things for that man. There have been a handful of celebrities that I've met and hosted and paid to be at my show that I've been like, I never want to see you again for the rest of my life, and you
Oh
have
no.
damaged my view of the property that you were in indelibly forever.
Oh,
But that is few and far between. But I have met so many incredible celebrities that I am rooting for in every single thing I see their name on. And David Howard Thornton is definitely one of them. That
he
is
seems
one of
like
the
such a sweet
kindest.
dude.
That is one of the kindest men on the planet. And we were talking about how, he's showed up in an Ice Nine Kills video, and
Yep.
they use Art the Clown on stage at their shows now. And I was talking to somebody about him, and I was like, this dude, it seems so nice. He probably goes and sits in his car and just listens to fucking Cannibal Corpse everywhere he goes. And so when I got the chance, I asked him, I was like, what kind of music are you into? I just kind of figured you're probably into like some hardcore shit or whatever. He's like,
Yeah,
oh
Gary
no,
Manilow.
I like 70s and like 50s golden oldies. I like something that's like really easy to listen to and
No
doesn't really
shit.
do. Yeah, he's like, I just like easy listening music, like just nothing too crazy. And I was just
I
like,
need to meet David Howard Thornton because that's right up my alley, man.
yeah, he's very much just the nicest guy. And he deserves all the fame. Like I don't know if anytime I see his name on something, I'm going to put my money into that property. I think
That's
that he
awesome.
absolutely deserves it.
That's awesome.
For
I'm
sure.
looking forward to at some point, maybe down the road, even if I have to pay to do it, just getting to meet him and shake his hand.
Yeah,
But
if you see him anywhere near you at any con or horror con or anything, go meet that dude. He's so great.
gotcha. Him and David Dastmalchian are the two that I'm like, holy shit, I need to meet all of these people right now.
Yeah, what was that horror film that David Dastmalchian just did? It was fairly recent. The one
Was
where
it
he's like a 1950s television personality.
yeah, Late Night with the Devil.
Yeah, Late Night with the Devil. That was a mind fuck.
So
I really liked
good.
that show. Yeah, I
I
really
was
liked that
nervous as
movie.
hell because I didn't know. So before going into that, I had only seen him in bit parts, right? Like he played one of the escape mental patients in
Dark Knight.
the Dark Knight, right?
Yeah.
And then I had seen him in Dune, obviously, in a role that should have been much bigger than it was in the film, which broke my fucking heart, but it is what it is. So I'd only ever seen him in these supporting things. So when I first found out, hey, there's a horror movie coming out starring Nostalgia, and I was like, like I don't,
Yeah,
I
he's the
just don't
Russian guy
know,
in Ant-Man.
right? And I'm like,
Yeah.
I just don't know if he can carry a film. And then I saw it, and I was like, holy shit, give me more of that guy. Like I'll watch
you had a
anything he's
chance?
attached to.
Have you had a chance to watch Murderbot?
I have not yet.
He's in that too, and he's really good in that.
I will watch that just knowing that he's in it now. It was the
I've-
Skarsgård brother. I don't really. I've seen True Blood. I've seen what that guy has to offer. I watched Infinity Pool.
Yeah, and I'm also still mad at his brother for the Crow movie. So it's
not his fault.
It's not his fault, but he was part of it. He
Listen,
read that script. He knew what he was doing.
The script was fine. They just shouldn't have named him Brent. They shouldn't have named him
Eric and Shelley. Yeah, they
and
shouldn't have been Eric
Shelley.
and Shelley.
It should have been a completely different storyline, but still in the Crow universe, and it would have been a good movie. Not a great movie, but a good movie.
I said this on my review of that. So the Crow, the 1994 Crow, is my favorite movie. Not again.
Yes.
I've explained my love of film and superheroes and movies. I don't love The Crow, and it's not my favorite film because I think it's perfect. I don't think it's cinematically the greatest movie ever made, but it's perfect for me. It has everything I want. It's got a gothic hero. I'm a goth myself. He's in fucking Detroit Rock City. There's so few films set in fucking Detroit, for God's sake.
Other than Airheads, you're right.
Yeah, they're living in Detroit Rock City, also a good movie.
Also set in Detroit, coincidentally.
Yeah, crazy. But it's perfect for me. It's got everything I like. It's a love, revenge, violence. Somebody kills somebody with a katana a couple times. Like, it ticks most of my boxes. It's got enough in it for me that I love it as a film. And when I did my review of Crow 94, I said this, and it still stands true. It stood true when I left the movie. The new version of The Crow, starring Bill Skarsgård, is the second best Crow film out of all of the Crow movies. And there's still a pretty big fucking gap between the original and the newest one. But out of all of the movies of The Crow, there's The Crow with Brandon Lee, and then much further down is the new one, and then probably City of Angels, and then all of the direct-to-video ones they did after that. But
see, I would put City of Angels over the remake.
I don't agree with that. City of Angels is such a miss for me. It's like
I agree.
They took everything that they thought worked in the first one and tried to remake it
on it.
And it's so far like you can. It's art for money's sake is what it is. You can tell there's no love for the character of the Crow or James O'Barr's original comic books in City of Angels.
Yep.
The love is that the first one did really well whenever it came out, and they needed to make a second one.
I agree. And then Kirsten Dunst could not save City of Angels. It just wasn't going to fucking happen. And Eric Mabius, what the fuck happened to that guy?
Kirsten Dunst isn't in City of Angels.
She's in Salvation. Excuse me, the third one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then the Wicked Prayer.
Yeah, the fourth one.
We don't need to talk about.
Where the only thing I will talk about in that is that instead of putting the Crow makeup on, which is literally the thing the Crow does, he gets set on fire and everything heals on his face.
Well, no, so that was Salvation. Ability,
but the fucking Crow makeup for the burns. Okay, Salvation. That one.
Yeah,
that was the third one. Yeah, I was like, okay, yeah, everything healed with that. Great, makes total sense.
So the fourth one was the Edward Furlong, David Boreanaz vehicle.
Really bad. That's really bad. That was really hard to watch.
So bad. Yeah. I've actually, so shameless plug, I have a review series for the Crow franchise on the channel. I think I've done the first 2 films. I haven't gotten around to the last 3 for reasons that you just heard, but I will get to them eventually. I promise.
I would say that if I had to list Crow properties, like live action properties, it's probably The Crow.
Yep.
The new Crow. What was it? Crow Stairway to Heaven, the television series.
See, I would flip those too.
And then City of Angels.
Yep.
And the only reason I don't rate the television series higher is that the first part of the first series is just the movie all over again. And then after that, they're like, okay, we're out of ideas. What are we going to do? And it's like, let's put him in a rock band. Let's make him a hero, like Monster of the Week hero, and tell fucking stories. And it was like, there's like a lot of Crow comics. There's a lot of Crow comics. James O'Barr created a lot of different characters besides Eric Draven. There was a lot to pull from. You could have just told the story of a different Crow. You could have
gone to hell
into one narrative, but instead you just abandon everything and you're like, let's make him a rock star.
Yep. Let's take Mark DeCasco from that Jamaican capoeira movie and throw him in here and see how it goes. That's right. That's
just been watching all the same fucking shit.
That's an Only the Strong reference for those of you old enough to remember.
Is a part of my childhood.
Same age. Old as fuck.
Yep.
At least in YouTube years.
Definitely. Considering we can both remember a world where YouTube didn't exist. Yeah.
No kidding. Old. What a beautiful world that was when not every movie was the best ever or the worst ever made.
When they didn't use Twitter reviews as critical reviews in movie trailers.
Oh my God. John Doe 531 says.
Yes. That used to, when they first started doing that, like when all the critical review was so fucking bad that they just pulled all their reviews off of YouTube or off TikTok or off Twitch. Jesus Christ, how many fucking social medias can I mention and not get the right one? Twitter. And
X, sure. X.
Yeah, nobody's gonna call it that ever. But when they started, I remember, like, I don't even remember what the fucking movie was. I know that it was a piece of shit, and that's why I don't remember it. But the first time that happened, it was this movie that they'd been saying was going to be coming out for some years, and the trailers had been out, and then it dropped in the theaters, and like the new commercials for it, all of the reviews for the movie were like Twitter usernames instead of like Roger Ebert, and it was like, oh, that's a really bad movie. Like, that's
Well, to
really
be fair,
bad.
Roger Ebert was probably dead at that point, right?
Yeah. No, yeah, no, Siskel was
no,
dead.
really?
Ebert was still around. Yeah, he was still around.
Oh, see, that's depressing.
Trevor said they were trying to build on the same line as the Highlander series, but it didn't work with The Crow.
True.
Yeah, so I probably have a little more. Again, I'll go on a fucking tangent, so don't let me, Chris. I fucking will. But my introduction to the Highlander was through the television series, and I found out there were movies much later. And
Really?
so I have a very strong affinity for the Highlander TV series. And I love the movies too. I love all of the Highlander stuff. Again, I don't need it to be good cinema to enjoy it.
Well, that's good because you're only one of those.
Yeah. Explain to me the conceit of the original Highlander movie, right? Where they cast one of the most famous Scottish actors in the world to play a Spaniard.
Egyptian.
Then they cast, Egyptian too. And then they cast a moderately famous French actor to play the Scottish guy.
Yep.
And they didn't have to do that. Highlander was an original property. Those guys could have picked any nationality they wanted.
Oh man,
but
fucking Ramirez.
They were like, that's what the script says, so this is what we're doing.
My Chihuahua's middle name is Ramirez, just because of Sean Connery's role in that movie.
And
yes, I am white enough that my Chihuahua has a middle name.
I was just blown away that you have a Chihuahua.
I do. He's adorable, and you should not judge.
I'll take your word for it. It's one of the only breed of dogs I do not care for. You're not going to sell me on a Chihuahua.
Most people don't. They're ridiculously aggressive.
It's the only dog I've ever been bit by, ever.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Thankfully, it was only on my ankle because that's as high as it could get. But Trevor said there is no Highlander 2. I kind of like how shitty Highlander 2 is. I like the director's cut where they tried to make it. They swap the alien storyline and make them time travelers instead.
Yep, for the Renegade cut. Yep.
Yeah, but anyway,
super hard to find.
We were talking about horror, though, were we not?
We were. Creepshow is the title of the episode, episode 4 of Nightmares and Nerdscapes. So moving over to something to tide you over, which is probably out of all of the shorts in this film, is probably the most recognizable for 2 reasons. The first being Ted Danson, who was coming into really prominence as Sam in Cheers leading into this. And Leslie Nielsen, who at the time, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but at the time, I believe in '82, Leslie Nielsen was still very much known as a serious actor. I don't think he had really gone down the Naked Gun route yet.
He started that in Airplane, and I do believe Airplane postdates this.
So that was 79? Let me look that up real quick, because I want to make sure I get this right, because Airplane was huge for his career.
Yeah, so that was
and
his
really
first
kind of
movie.
Yeah, and really kind of kicked off the Leslie Nielsen that most of us know, right? We know Airplane, we know Naked Gun, Naked Gun 2.5, Naked Gun 33 1/3.
Yep. So it predates this by 2. It predates the release of this by 2 years.
Gotcha. And you can kind of see that in the way he portrays the character of Robert in this skit, because he is very much the maniacal. He's obviously evil, right? He had killed Mary Pryor, and then he comes to get Ted Danson's character, who I'm like one glass of bourbon too far to remember at this point.
Rick. Isn't his name Rick?
Rick, that's right. And bury them up to the neck and let the tide do what it's going to do, right? But you also get those kind of that over-the-top comedic timing and emoting from Leslie Nielsen that we would come to either love or hate, circa Dracula Dead and Loving It. Right? I'm not going to go Mr. Magoo, because everybody hated Mr. Magoo, but Dracula Dead loving it. I think people were still kind of on the Leslie Nielsen as a comedic actor bandwagon.
Yeah.
So for this one, I know you had mentioned earlier that this was one of the ones that really stuck with you as far as remembering what was in Creepshow. So what about this one really stuck out to you and and stuck to you for lack of a broader vocabulary?
When you're looking at all of the things in Creepshow, this is the only one, and I guess there's some argument for this with the crate, but this is the only one where there's a very clear villain and he gets a sense of karmic justice from the universe and he gets his just desserts. Like, that's
fair.
The only one to this point in the story where that happens. And I feel like in the whole movie, the only time that happens.
I would agree with that. Because even in The Hitchhiker, it's kind of which is the last short in the film, right?
I don't even remember. I just rewatched it and I don't remember The Hitchhiker. So is that
in 2?
I think it's in 2 because I just rewatched it right before we went live and there was nothing that was not in it.
Let me see.
It went from the Tide one to I think the cockroach one, and then that ends the film.
That's right. Yep. I mixed up the cockroach one with the Hitchhiker from 2.
But yeah, out of all of them, and I take it back because then the next one after that also a sense of like universal karmic justice for that one. And I would say out of all of the stories in Creepshow, those are the 2 that I remember the most and hear talked about the most. And I think that's because you can feel good about them.
I agree with that. I think they're also the only ones that have a full narrative arc.
Yeah.
I mean, a complete, if you break things down in the 3-act structure, or if you really want to dig into it, you could probably break it down to the 5-act structure, but I'm not going to do that with 20-minute shorts. This is really the only one that you see a clear beginning, middle, and end for the relationship between Ted Danson and Leslie Nielsen's character. Even though the first act of it, I think, is kind of skimmed over with regards to Leslie Nielsen's relationship and the effects or the interactions rather with Mary, Ted Danson's wife in the film.
They do a good job setting you up. So you started off with nobody wants to be cheated on. Like, that is a bad place to be in a relationship. So right at the beginning, whenever you start off with Leslie Nielsen's character, you kind of feel like, okay, this guy's like showing up and like, hey, this isn't right. Like, you shouldn't do this. And then Ted Danson's character says like, it was over anyway. We were going to tell you. And he's like, it's not about whether it was over. I couldn't tell you if I ever even loved her. The important thing is that she's mine and I'm not going to let her go. And then immediately you're like, okay, fuck this guy. He deserved to be cheated on. Like, he's obviously a piece of shit. So even right off the bat, it does not give you any inkling that you should be rooting for Leslie Nielsen's character at all. Like, right off the bat, you're just like, fuck this guy. So yeah, I'd say they set it up for him to get his comeuppance and for you to feel good about it. And, I don't think we ever finished talking about the crate fully, but the crate leaves you on this note where the 2 best friends are sitting there getting ready to play a game of chess. And the one friend says, what if I had called the police on you? And he said, well, it's a good thing you didn't. So you know that you can't necessarily feel good about this guy's victory over getting rid of his wife, which is so problematic in so many ways, because just fucking break up with her, man. Just be like, hey, I don't like this. We're done. Like, you don't have to murder somebody in the most fucking roundabout way I've ever seen in my entire life to get out of a bad marriage. If you're not happy, just tell her. I thought that was weird. Divorce isn't great. Nobody's super excited to have a divorce, but I'm happily divorced and it was great on the other end of it. So like, that was like unnecessarily like, I'm going to drag her to the university, get her to hide under the stairs, get her to bump up against this crate and get this giant orangutan creature to kill her. And then at the end, you're like, this guy seemed like he'd had enough, but he also seems like once he was willing to cross that line, he's willing to cross it again.
Yep.
So you don't feel good about the ending of the crate, which I would give the crate like a 3 out of 5. I think it's a fun story.
I would agree with that.
Reviewing it, I think it's got a lot of meat on the bone when you watch it.
Completely agree. And Hal Holbrook just by himself could have carried that, but the actress that they brought in to play his outrageously obnoxious wife really stole the show.
They told that lady act as obnoxious as possible, and she fucking knocked it out of the park.
She did it in spades. She methoded that shit.
If the director was like, be a sweetheart and have everybody love you, she's the worst actress in history.
I agree.
She's irredeemable as far as I'm concerned. But the for the Ted Danson, Leslie Nielsen story, Let the Tide, whatever. I can't. It's a long name. My memory's not that good. For that one, I think it leaves you on a note of like, yeah, those fucking water zombies were terrifying, but at the same time, like that guy had it coming.
Right. Well, I guess what kind of confused me about it, right? And again, this is coming from somebody who I'm not an author. I've never been published. I would never purport to be. I do some writing on the side, and I've got a bachelor's in creative writing, right? So a story to me is very, very important. The one part of this that I always missed is where the hell did the zombies come from? There's never any explanation as to why Ted Danson and his wife come back as zombies. I mean, I get why they want to kill the guy. That's perfectly clear. But where the fuck did they come from?
It's the same as the first story with the Father's Day. And I guess it's just Romero's love of zombies, maybe.
That's fair.
He was like, it's a zombie. It's like, why? And he's like, I don't know. The moon was warm.
Savini knows how to make them.
Yeah. But I also wanted to comment on this back when we were on Father's Day. It's also incredible to see that zombification can cure your stroke. Get you back on your feet, and maybe scientists should look into that. But maybe
if you eat enough brains, it repairs the damaged part of your own.
Who knows, man? That's not the part of the brain that zombification works on. You know, your motor skills come back, rigor mortis is reversed, and you're good to go. But in this one, I don't know where Poseidon. I don't know. Poseidon made up zombies. If I had to hazard,
maybe it was a magic pail.
Oh yeah, there was that bucket, and he was looking at it. He was like, "There's a bucket out there."
Yep, something happened. The tide must have taken him out.
Maybe that bucket was ordered from the Creepshow comic, and it's a comeback from the dead bucket, much like the voodoo doll for the end of the movie.
That's very possible.
Yeah,
that's very possible.
Zombie race out of the comic book.
The kid from the overall narrative used to play at that beach and left his bucket there.
That makes sense. See,
none of this is true
now,
ladies and gentlemen. We're just we're pulling shit out of our ass at this point. But so this one for me, as memorable as it was, this has never been one of my favorite shorts out of the film. I always actually rated this lower than Father's Day. And I think part of it is for the reason that you said earlier, right? You know the motivation. And I'm a big fan of cosmic horror. I'm a big fan of, I hate to use the term Lovecraftian horror just because of the connotations that come with it. But I love the not necessarily knowing why the hell shit is going wrong for people, just that it is. So for me, Father's Day always ranked higher than this one for me. Just because I didn't need those, I didn't necessarily need those motivations to enjoy it. And Father's Day for me is just a far more fun short. The kills are cooler. The acting is goofier. I mean, Ed Harris dancing to music while some lady yells at him that the music is too loud is just classic, as opposed to Leslie Nielsen looking at closed circuit TV, right?
Yeah.
So for me, this to me, I think is like a 2 out of 5. Where would you put it?
I think I'm right there with you. I
No.
think that while this one seems like it is packaged in a really pretty box with a nice bow on it for consumption,
Yes.
as opposed to Father's Day. So if like I said, for me, just with the questions that Father's Day raised for me, just like the way I felt at the end of it, conflicted and stuff. Not necessarily for like the filmmaking. I rated that very low, but for the rest of that, I'd call it a 5. It really had me thinking about who I am and what side I stood on that whole thing. But with this one, yeah, it doesn't ask a lot out of you. It gives you all the answers other than where the fuck did those zombies come from. It's very basic. It's very vanilla, basic storytelling. You can see, I think even if I had not already seen this, knowing what Creepshow is, I would have been able to guess the resolution of this. And I probably wouldn't have believed that was the resolution if I was basing my guess on everything else that happens in the movie, because that is just too easy.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, I'd put it around a 2-ish. Yeah. I don't.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I would call it my favorite thing in the movie.
That's fair. That's fair. So looking at them overall, right? So we got the prologue, right, which is obviously just the boy getting the comic book and his dad taking him away from it, and then the epilogue from that with the voodoo doll, and all that good stuff. So looking at Father's Day, Lonesome Death of Jordy Verrill, Something to Tide You Over, and The Crate, and we forgot one.
Yeah,
I forgot one. I forgot anti-cockroach guy locked in his fucking hermetic bunker.
Yeah.
With an amazing fucking cast in this one, even though it's only 2 people. Yeah, they're creeping up on you. So, ruthless business guy, locked up in a bunker, hates bugs because he grew up in New York, but he learned how to take care of them as a kid. You spray them, squash them, and kill them.
He's from Hell's Kitchen, man. He's lucky he didn't get turned into a blind lawyer.
He did that line. I grew up in Hell's Kitchen. I know how to handle a bug. This one to me is this is a throwaway short for me. Like, whether this was included or not, it wouldn't have made any difference whatsoever. I mean, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, other than the fact that the guy's an asshole and he treats the help like shit, I got nothing else from this short.
This short is an excuse for the movie crew and whoever was in charge of practical special effects to get to flex his fucking skills, because that's the best part of this, is all of the practical effects they used for the different cockroach scenes where they're in random things, they're in the food, they're crawling all over his house, they're on the, because I'm sure on some of those scenes they were just real cockroaches, but some of it they're not. The comic doesn't do it justice, and
let me zoom in on you.
It is the last page of the comic. And like I said, the comic doesn't really do it justice compared to what it does in the movie.
Oh, it's so good in the movie.
In the movie, they crawl out of his neck, his chest, his face, and it's up close, and they're full fucking shots of this happening. And out of everything in this, because the rest of it is like, it's like a basic ass, like, white wall room with like the poorest looking Star Trek computer effects.
There's a multi-line telephone. That was pretty cool in 82.
Yes. I was the envy. It was the envy of all single line phone users in the 80s. But other than that, that's so fucking basic. Other than that final scene where the cockroaches blow out of his face and neck and chest, that I applaud their love for practical effects, but the characters are very poorly written. The dialogue is very rough. And you're not meant to be like, oh, I hope he survives that. You're supposed to be rooting for those fucking cockroaches.
And the crazy thing is, the cockroaches aren't what fucking kills him. He has a heart attack during a blackout, and the cockroaches just happen to. I'm like, come on, man! Like, really? That's how you're gonna pay this off?
But then also, like, they had to have already been inside of him to come out in droves like that, you know?
You would think so.
Unless that's like a flash forward, you know, but it seems
know.
immediate. So he was always filled with cockroaches from the beginning, which I guess maybe if I'm following the narrative there, all the cockroaches in his house were coming from him.
I could kind of see that. He is the source of the evil. That sounds like a king thing.
He is the cockroach. Yeah. So he was made of cockroaches. Didn't realize it. He kept wanting to know where the cockroaches are coming from. Why he couldn't get rid of them. They were inside of him the whole time. The cockroaches were coming from inside the house.
Why do I have this sudden craving for sugar water? I don't understand. So this one's a 1 out of 5 for me, for sure.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Outside of the practical effects that Savini fucking killed and always does, with the exception of Pamela Voorhees' death in Friday the 13th because of the hairy hands.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everything else he's done, the man has been exceptional.
Yeah. So yeah, again, this one doesn't move the needle on the horror genre at all. I think it is crazy that on this rewatch, the first one, which is so unmemorable for me, is the one that I think it has the most indelible, has left the most indelible impression on me, just because it left me with so many questions when I was done with it.
By a long shot.
Yeah, and I didn't have that going into it. I didn't remember that existed. I remembered every other short in this, except for that one. Yeah, it creeps up on you. It's all right. I mean, it's the same kind of shit you would have seen on fucking Night Gallery or Twilight Zone. You know, it's run of the mill.
Yep. So looking at this as a collection, right? After following, I think this came after The Outer Limits and the original Twilight Zone, right? But it predates Tales from the Dark Side.
Okay.
As a film, right? So do you think that this helped or hindered the horror anthology subgenre in film? Because we really kind of saw it die out, right? Outside of Creepshow and Tales from the Dark Side.
Yeah, that's valid. That's a tough question to answer, just based on the fact that you have to ask whether you're referring to the popularity of it in the zeitgeist of the American filmmaker or film viewer at the time.
Okay.
Are we talking about the popularity in the subgenre of horror fans? Because for that period in the United States, the counterculture movement where something not being popular pushed people into loving it, I would say that this is one of those things that, like, you'd have shown to your grandparents and they'd have been like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And you'd show
100%.
your friend after school one day and they'd be like, this is the sickest shit I've ever seen in my life.
Yep.
And so the question is, like, what did this do compared to, like, your father's Twilight Zone fandom? It probably didn't register with them correctly. They probably weren't interested in this sort of an anthology. But what did it do for people that would grow up and love Tales from the Crypt that would be too much for kids at the time, but would inspire R.L. Stine to give us Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark and
Fear Street?
Yeah, Fear Street, and like books then, and then also Nickelodeon picking up on that to make a television series out of it.
Are You
and then
Afraid of the Dark?
The idea of there being children's or preteen horror anthologies. I think that this very much set that standard. and created the interest in that, which is why we ended up with a Creepshow 2, a Creepshow 3, a Creepshow television series. Like, so I would say that when a lot of those other horror anthology television series were more cerebral and less overt in their horror themes and less like creature horror anthologies, Creepshow moved the needle enough that it created a space for that horror creature anthology genre that is so much different from what they gave us in the previous horror anthologies we got.
Hugely. And I would 100% agree with you there, because you see a drastic change in horror television from pre-Creepshow to post-Creepshow, right?
Yes.
Pre-Creepshow, you had the Outer Limits, you had the Twilight Zone, you had these very everything was not necessarily heavy-handed in its approach to social issues and social topics of the time, but they were obviously there, right? And you move from that into the era of Friday the 13th, the television series, and A Nightmare on Elm Street, the television series, which a lot of people forget about, which was essentially Tales from the Crypt, but with Freddy as the Crypt Keeper.
Yeah.
I think there was actually only one episode where Fred Krueger shows up as an actual character in the story, and it's from his trial prior to the parents murdering him, right?
Yeah.
And then we move into, Are You Afraid of the Dark? And Goosebumps.
Yeah, Goosebumps.
You get things like the Big Bad Beetleborgs in the 90s, which a lot of people forget about, but was a horror-themed play on the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers type. Was it Sentai? Is that right?
Yeah, Super Sentai.
And it continues down that road, right? And along with that, in parallel, in the we'll call it reality TV now. But back then it wasn't known as that. You also had the rise of things like Unsolved Mysteries, which still took that very monster of the week type approach, right? FBI's Most Wanted. Buffy the Vampire Slayer would do it in the 90s, along with Angel and fucking Alias, and Supernatural does it now. Like, it's just this approach to the monster of the week, or the monster of the story in short form, but holding an overarching narrative, right? Which if you look at the prologue and the epilogue of Creepshow and Creepshow 2 with the young boy, it kind of builds to that narrative structure going forward, which I think a lot of people either A, don't recognize, or B, kind of glance over in discussions of what they see as more impactful pieces of cinema. Does that make sense, or am I rambling?
That makes sense. I also have a really hard time believing that Lloyd Kaufman wasn't taking notes from Creepshow 1 whenever he started making Trauma, because you see a lot of very similar imagery to the Father's Day zombie and the Tide ocean zombies in Toxie and some of the other Trauma characters that show up throughout there. So I would even say that you could consider Trauma to be a spin-off of what they did here in Creepshow, because it's so, they were going for that comic book look with the lighting and the way they cut it and the way they shot scenes and all that stuff. And I can see where, and maybe they've talked about this before. I'm certainly not a authority on Trauma or Lloyd Kaufman, but it just, to my eye, it seems as though there was some very clear inspiration taken from Creepshow for that as well, aesthetically.
Yeah, I can see that. So Trevor here was asking, where would you put Cat's Eye in that? I would actually put Cat's Eye much along the post Creepshow line, right? That lines up very, very closely to me, not so much with Tales of the Dark Side and Outer Limits, but more along the lines of a Tales of the Crypt, um, like early 90s HBO Tales of the Crypt,
Yes.
and Goosebumps, Fear Street, that kind of here are short pieces of horror that are insulary, right? They stand alone. They don't have to have that overarching narrative. Even though the cat itself within Cat's Eye kind of acts as that, right? You know what I'm trying to the glue that holds all of the shorts together.
I would say if it's got stop motion animation in it, as opposed to you never see the creature, and maybe some shadows running along a wall here and there, it's in the post Creepshow vein, because those other, like more cerebral horror anthologies, you know, where even when you had ones where the creature, there were creatures and the creature was an alien, the alien looked like a normal person, just slightly different. Whereas when you look at this and then post that period, things were very much not human. And Cat's Eye, when the monster in the main Cat's Eye short of that anthology is a weird little fucking clay troll, that's definitely more overt than cerebral. And so I would say it falls into the classification of this post Creepshow influence for sure.
100%. And that to me leads right into Child's Play, right? So if you look at Trilogy of Terror, right, with the little I forgot what they call him now, but the little doll with the spear that chases the lady around. It was the first movie where they actually did the scenes from the monster's point of view at that height.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm sorry.
You've never seen Trilogy of Terror?
I guess not.
Oh.
I'll check it out. I promise I'll check it out. It wasn't in my purview, but I will do the homework. I promise.
Yeah, take a look. I would put Cat's Eye in the Trilogy of Terror kind of post Creepshow, pre Child's Play realm, because you've got very similar storytelling to Creepshow, but it kind of set the stage from a filmmaking standpoint and from a cinematography standpoint, leading into Child's Play. Right. Same with Trilogy of Terror, which I just mentioned. Right. So there are scenes in Trilogy of Terror where the 6-inch tall wooden killer mannequin doll thing is chasing this woman, and basically what they did is they put the camera on a skateboard and rolled the skateboard toward her. Right. And that's how they showed things through its point of view, because they didn't have the technology from a digital standpoint yet to create a creature that small. But if they had done it with stop motion, it would have looked like Ray Harryhausen, but in the 1980s, which just wasn't going to be believable, right? The market would have laughed at it. Trilogy of Terror is another big one. I haven't done any episodes on that yet, but I might.
I'll check it out.
Dig into that.
It's another good anthology. If you ever do a Puppet Master episode, let me know. I would love to be on that.
I will do all 17 Puppet Master episodes. I love those movies.
I love Puppet Master. Yeah,
they're so good.
Yeah, so good, because it's like, what are these terrifying little dolls? Oh, they're killing Nazis. Let's root for them. Yeah, they're the good guys.
Yeah. They become the good guy.
Yeah.
So let's look at look at it from a Savini standpoint, right? Just Tom Savini's involvement alone. I mean, how much does that elevate this film over and above what it would be without him being there?
You look at everything else Tom Savini has done, created, and achieved in his career, and then know that he was cutting his teeth on Creepshow. Like this is very early Tom Savini.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's there's so much. When you're looking at Creepshow, there is so much. There are so many people that are going to be so much bigger than this movie was when it came out, 100%. And they're all in it. They're all in it. Like, like from the cast, the writer, the director, the person in charge of the stunt work. If John Williams did the fucking soundtrack to this, man, I would not be shocked if you just like told me, oh yeah, and John Williams was working on this. I'd be like, oh,
it would if you add John Williams or Hans Zimmer.
Yeah.
scoring this movie.
Did George R.R. Martin do some work on this? Was he
This
part
would
of it?
automatically become the most impactful film of the 80s, I think.
It's missing like one or two pieces to make this like, I don't know, was
And it's
was
TBS
Scorsese the
fodder.
key grip or something? Like, I need to see the full credits to know how many fucking incredible Hollywood legends were making this movie that whenever it came out probably was like, oh, that's cool, it'll be a horror movie.
Right, and it's become TBS fodder, right?
Yeah.
Like this is late night with Joe Bob Briggs kind of film at this point. Do you feel like Creepshow as a property gets the respect now that it deserves, or do you think it's kind of been left on the wayside?
I think like most things, I think, when the Beatles came out, people were concerned that their songs were going to force teenagers to have sex because they were just so.
I mean, they did.
Nobody forces teenagers to have sex.
That's valid.
Teenagers are gonna have sex. Like
that's valid.
They're in.
They gave them a soundtrack though.
They're in heat for like 5 years of their life. It's not their fault. That's why we need to educate them better. But what was I saying? You at that time, that was such a big like, oh my god, like you can't let your kids listen to the Beatles, and now like you'd play the Beatles at the mall, and like you wouldn't think twice about putting an older like an original like from their like premiere Beatles song on at like your daycare. Like nobody would blink. They'd be like, oh my god, it's a classic oldie.
Yesterday.
I don't think anyone realized that this was a turning point in history when it came out. We can look back along the timeline and see the influences it has and celebrate it for what it is. But I also think that horror has become so much more. Even, the effects are better. The zombies look more like zombies. This is laughably bad compared to modern horror standards. And so it's hard to think like, that's it. That's the key. That's the cornerstone block of the skyscraper that is modern horror.
Right.
But it's fucking right there, man. Like it absolutely is. Like, we've talked about it enough that, you can trace this story's lineage from the originators of horror masterpieces, and you can trace modern horrors. You can trace modern horrors origins almost directly back to what Creepshow gave us.
Yep.
And I just think that we've maybe had so many bigger things that seem much more bright and shiny compared to what Creepshow did, that maybe we don't think about it as much as we probably should.
Agreed. Now, we're of a generation now coming up that a lot of the folks that are our age and even a little younger are starting to dip into some more of the classic properties, right? Jordan Peele, for one, is huge for this. He put out a new series of unsolved mysteries for Netflix. We're seeing a Creepshow revival on Shudder right now. Do you think that is going to further enhance the impact that the original 1982 film had on the genre, or do you think that it's going to water it down for the new audience? Not for us, but for the newer audience coming in. Not an easy question. I know I'm hitting you with some.
Yeah, no. I think I can answer this in two parts.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we, fortunately and unfortunately, there's so much good and so much bad that comes from our control over the media we see now. Fortunately, if you are interested in horror and you are looking to find new things that you maybe haven't seen and maybe get a little deeper down that rabbit hole, which hopefully people do, I think that it will only help people interested in that to have access to these things and have them push towards them. I also think that unlike you and I, who, if we were wanting to stay up late and our parents didn't know we were out of bed and we were trying to watch something, and USA Up All Night happened to be showing Creepshow, and that just happened to be the thing we sat and watched because we only had 30 channels anyway.
Right.
And this was it's up all night. We're not supposed to be watching it. It seems like we're going to get in trouble for it. So the novelty of it was that we're going to get in trouble. Plus, it's a scary movie. You know, the fact that if your parents never get a subscription to Shudder, you're never going to be subjected to these things, is going to kill people that wouldn't have found this any other way.
Yep.
So I don't think either way is necessarily wrong.
Right.
It's just going to inherently change the audience for these things, because the way you get subjected to this is definitely very different from the way it was done in the past.
Oh, 100%.
So my best friend, Scott, super huge horror buff, super huge horror nut. All of his children are also horror nuts. Like they watch horror films with their dad. They're going to grow up loving horror films. Even if they grow up and they hit their teen years and they never watch a horror film for the rest of their lives, they know more about horror than the layperson. They're going to go the rest of their lives knowing more than the layperson.
Right.
Whereas, I'm not super into horror. I know it, but I haven't subjected my children to it. We don't sit and watch. I certainly haven't shown my children Cannibal Holocaust or Serbian film. And I'm not saying that my friend has, but if you wanted to have a conversation about horror films with my kids, they barely know anything. And then they're not chasing that rabbit hole. They're not looking for horror productions. So it's just, we very much have the ability to control what we see, and a greater ability to narrow what our children are going to find as they get older. And I don't think that we will know the result of that for another 20 years. And by then we'll be downloading things directly into our brains. So
fair enough.
I guess at the end of the day, the answer to your question from me is I don't fucking know, man. I don't know.
And I think that's true of everybody.
I'm so in the weeds with what it's going to look like in the future. It might be cave paintings. We might be telling our children these stories on cave walls because society has collapsed and we don't have an electrical grid anymore, and we're just fucking figuring it out. So
it's looking more and more like we're going to end up in Stalker, that Chernobyl movie from the 80s, where we're just fucking trying.
I don't know. They proposed Running Man. I guess
remake coming up.
Yeah, remake coming up, but also they proposed it as a real thing to do with immigrants and
Kristi Noem's a genius.
Yeah, so
Jesus Christ.
Again, right, not going to get into a huge socio-political conversation, but we could start a socio-political podcast so that people who are
that's another episode.
Can chime in. Yeah,
Anger and Depression with Danny and CJ.
Yeah. Dumpster fire. Welcome this week to Dumpster Fire.
Forged in the fire of a dumpster.
Yeah.
Well, on that depressing note, really, I think that's it. So the couple of data points that I think folks should keep in mind, right? So Creepshow was made with an $8 million budget, which in 1982 was pretty damn impressive.
Big ass budget.
What is more impressive is that it made $21 million.
Fuck.
In theaters before it became the cult classic that it is now. So this movie has done gangbusters, to steal a term from absolutely no one, because no one says that anymore. Even when it came out. And for anybody that hasn't seen this film or its sequel, Creepshow 2, watch it. The first one is available for rent or purchase on Amazon Prime. The second one is available to stream for free with your $300 Amazon Prime subscription or whatever the hell it is nowadays. Definitely work.
I did find Creepshow on a not necessarily legal streaming site, which is where I watched it. So,
Ooh.
yeah.
So do some Googling, folks, and you
Yeah.
will find Creepshow. But overall, I mean, it's just a damn classic movie. Is it great? No. Is it shit? Also, no. But did it lead to some outstanding stuff down the road? Not just for the filmmakers, but also for the cast? Yeah. I mean, Ed Harris built a career over. We would not have Apollo 13 without Creepshow. That's a stretch. I made that up. But also it's kind of true. Cheers would not exist without Creepshow. I also made that up. But we're gonna go with it. Heard it here first, folks.
Oh wow, what's the cheers? What's the cheers to Creepshow to Zombieland pipeline for Woody Harrelson?
Oh Jesus Christ!
we don't have to do that, but I'm just
All right, yeah,
know,
that's a
think
good one.
about it.
That's a
Think
good
about
one.
it.
I should start doing that with the films, like 7 Degrees of whatever horror film I'm reviewing.
Yeah.
But all right, so we've gone about 2.5 hours with a lot of tangents, but definitely appreciate you jumping on again.
No problem, brother.
Love the conversation, man. I'm not big on structure, and obviously, but I do enjoy the conversation. I think everybody gets a lot out of it. But from you, Danny, what do you got? Go ahead, bud.
Your unstructured show is unfortunately right up my fucking alley, because I will go down a 75-minute tangent about, it's like a stream of consciousness where I'm like, yeah, there were 5 Power Rangers, and the next thing you know, I'm talking about, Chernobyl. So yeah, exactly. I loved it. I've had a blast on your show, Chris. I'm so glad that we did this. We've had a few like great exchanges, like messaging, and then you being in the chat on A Cutting Edge Hero. But like this really defined for me what our relationship is and should be moving forward. So I'm excited about that. I also, I'm sure you're aware of this, but are you aware that this next Friday is the first like June Friday the 13th in like forever? And
which is also Jason's birthday.
Yes.
100%.
Yes, absolutely.
I've actually I posted a poll on the YouTube channel for classic horror franchises that I should rank and review next. One of them that I left off was Friday the 13th, because I plan on doing a ranking video for the franchise to hopefully release on Friday the 13th, but we'll see if real life and work allows me to do so.
Yeah, so we have a friend who's super into horror, a totally different friend from my best friend. We have a friend that's super into slasher films and horror stuff, and she's hosting a Friday the 13th party on Friday the 13th, and we're doing a watch along of like all the Friday the 13th movies and just hanging out all night. So
that is
excited
awesome.
about that. Got that.
You're in for about 3.5 hours worth of good movies.
Yeah. So I'm excited about that. Glad I could be on the show. I'm glad that we could do this together, and I'm glad to be in the family now. If you are not familiar with Cutting Edge Hero, we are live every Wednesday, 7-ish. We do our best to go live at 7, but the show's not ready till it's ready. So sometimes we roll at 7:15, sometimes at 7:30. But anyway, you're in for a treat. We have a blast on the show. The comment section is incredibly lively. The commenters are a part of the show. So if you want to be in the show, just get in the comments, because we're going to make you part of the show as we go. We also have Cape Con coming up here in beautiful Riverside, Cape Girardeau, Missouri, November 7th, 8th, and 9th. We are co-celebrating our 20th anniversary along with Avatar: The Last Airbender's 20th anniversary. We will have Janet Varney, the voice of Avatar Korra, here in attendance. We will also have Greg Baldwin, the voice of Uncle Iroh, in both Avatar: The Last Airbender and The Legend of Korra.
Is he going to cosplay it?
He is going to cosplay. The last time he was at our show. He was getting his wig redone, so he did not cosplay. So this will be his first time at our show in cosplay. We have some other really incredible guests in the pipeline that we cannot announce yet, but I'm telling you, if you have not made it to a Cape Con, if you have not made it to a con at all, this is the one to come to. So we got all that coming, and got that to look forward to.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Danny. And again, I'll foot stomp that. I mean, Cutting Edge Hero is a blast every week. I'm there every Wednesday that I can be, being a complete asshole in chat, and having a blast with it. I love listening to Danny and Jen and Landon and Randy talk about nerd stuff, news, video games, anime, all that good stuff. As far as the DFPN family goes as a whole, tonight was a massive night for the WWE. With Worlds Collide and Money in the Bank 2025. So please go check out the No Gimmicks podcast hosted by Kelvin Cayley and Frankie D. I'm sure they're going to have a lot of good conversations going on over the next couple of days with a fallout from that. Again, every Friday night, we've got the Smoke Pit podcast, which is a very military veteran friendly podcast, but covers a lot of cultural topics as well. Hosted by Mac, who may or may not be AKA your boy. You'd have to tune in and find out if he actually is. And Black Kelvin Cayley as well, hosting that one, and Eat the Cake Anime along with Nox Eterna on our Patreon. So please, please check out thedfpn.com for all of our different shows. Hang around until after Danny and I go off the air. My little outro will show you all the different shows we have. Look us up on Facebook, Blue Sky, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your entertainment, and check us out. But from my standpoint, Danny, this has been an absolutely blast of a conversation. I love getting to shoot the shit with people, especially around horror and horror adjacent topics and where that leads. And you are welcome, sir, anytime. And I mean that wholeheartedly. I've really enjoyed this, and I look forward to doing it again.
Thank you. Yeah, me too. I look forward to it.
Awesome. But for you folks out there, appreciate your time. Appreciate you stopping by. Be sure to do all the normal cliched bullshit of like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you know whenever I post new random shit. But until next time, y'all take it easy and remember to just go see a fucking movie. Man, just get a boyfriend, friend, girlfriend, cis pan friend, whatever you got, whether you're in the box, out of the box, wherever you are on the spectrum. Go sit in a dark room with a bunch of fucking strangers and just watch some shit that's not real life. It might be horrifying, but it won't be realistically horrifying, which means it's more entertaining than what we're going through day to day. So yeah, get out there and just enjoy yourself. Have a good time. Check out some entertainment, and we'll catch you next time. So until then, cheers.